This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Sean Sutter in the third chair.
Gnomes are great.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of a gifted, multi-talented creator cruising on a natural high as he bounces from art to rules to layout and design. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon, the men, the women, the boys, and girls who keep this show running, who keep the lights on, who keep us going in this grueling pace day after day, week after week, year after year. It's even been a decade.
Yes.
It's Gordon Robb, Zach Robinson, Jack Rossler, Andy Rucker, Jason Sally, and Game Salute. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, warm welcome Wakelin, and the genuine genius behind Metal King Studios and Relicblade, the producer savant Sean Sum Total Sutter. Let's begin. Issue number 1. The term jack of all trades can be a compliment and it can be an insult. The compliment comes from the fact that it might refer to a person who can do many things well. When the final part of the original phrase is added, and master of none, it is more of an insult, of course, but for those few people out there who seem capable of doing everything and doing it well, there's really no other phrase that captures the spirit of the thought. Question. In 1592, Robert Greene used the term Johann Factotum, Johnny Do-It-All in Latin, as an insult dismissing an upstart rival. This was the first written reference to what world historical figure? Redgrave Russ.
I'm going to go with Michael Jordan.
Shackleton Sean.
Oh my. It must be Peter Van der Weyden.
And that is sadly, Michael, I'm still lost with Michael Jordan. You're both wrong, but Russ is so phenomenally wrong that it's just blinded. It's William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare. Of course,
That was my
everyone
second
knows
choice.
Robert Greene.
Yeah,
Robert Greene, the great writer from the Elizabethan age. No, of course not. But the guy he made fun of, we all know him. Sure. Issue number 2. There are as many ways to achieve creative inspiration as there are creators in this wide and wacky world. Every person might gain insight into a new endeavor from almost any quarter. Music, images, similar genres, and so forth. All may spawn an original idea that might just launch a whole new world into being at any moment. Question. The etymology of the word inspiration comes through Old English and French from the original Latin inspirare. What does inspirare mean? Rarefied Russ.
To thrust upward with a spear.
Shriven Sean.
Inspirare. It's a spark of fire and doom.
Yeah. There's some thought behind that. There's some originality, but clearly you have a superior mind to Russ's, who just went for the lowbrow comedy, of course. And sadly, you're still both wrong. It means to breathe into or to breathe. I really like that. It's very fun.
Oh, yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it? Oh, those Romans. Issue number 3. When one sets out to create a new science fiction milieu, especially for a war game, one of the most tricky pieces is always how to create multiple factions that create an opportunity for conflict while at the same time making each interesting and unique. With a differentiating power at technology level, but with an equal chance at success, or everyone would just play Resurrection. Oh, never mind. Question. Given that every sane human being knows that 4 is the minimum faction count for a rational game world, what percentage spread would be acceptable between the best and worst performing factions in any given competitive war game? Interlinking rings Russ.
10%.
Separate sex Sean.
94.32%.
That would be a brutal differentiation.
It would.
What are maths?
7.6%. No arguments, scientifically reached conclusion. Moving on. 7.6. Issue number 4. Skirmish is the new black, and gamers around the world are looking into games with low model count, small footprints, and clear, streamlined rules to get the most out of their hobby and gaming hours. But balancing the intricacies and interactions for a variety of characters as opposed to large units can be hard. And many small model count minis games bog down when each mini has more rules than any 3 units in your average army scale game. Question. In a range of 1 through 7, 7, No, sadly, I don't think it's 7. I think it's 6. Where 1 equals checkers and 6 equals 4-dimensional chess on a moving platform in high winds, what is the ideal complexity level of a single model in a small count skirmish game? Recondite Russ.
I'm going to go with 5.2.
Synthesized Sean.
3.8.
Oh, you guys with your decimals. Oh, no. You're both wrong. It's got to be 6, doesn't it? No, wait.
6?
Maybe,
wait.
maybe
6 is maximum. Didn't you say 6 is maximum?
I don't. Yeah. Well, wait. Let's go with a nice combination. Let's say 3s and 4s, maybe with 1, 6, and a few 1s. Yeah, that's going to be the answer. The exact answer, which of course makes you both wrong. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello!
Hello.
Hello?
Hey, welcome to episode 237, Craig.
237 sounds like it should be important, but I've got nothing.
Of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Sean Sutter.
Hey, Sean, welcome to the show. So Sean has many talents, and we will be reviewing all of those talents later this episode when we talk about his phenomenal game, Relicblade, right, Craig?
Yep, absolutely. The man does it all.
He does. And Sean,
he does the artwork, he sculpts, he comes up with the rules, he comes up with the fluff, he does everything.
So we're super excited to talk to Sean about this. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
That's my pleasure.
Yeah, and also we're going to talk a little bit about the game that has Craig and I painting spaceships again. Right, Craig?
Yes, actually, at the moment, I'm just painting little cities.
I feel like you're cheating. And so right now, he's getting ahead of me on painting because I am completely dedicated to you, the listener, completely focused on this recording. Meanwhile, Craig is painting.
Has agreed to be the one who paints all the little cities.
Okay, fair. We'll be talking about Dropfleet Commander today. Today is going to be part 1 of a 2-parter on Dropfleet Commander. We'll be talking about the fluff, the background, the models, and that sort of thing. And then next time, we'll dive into the rules mechanics and how it works. Because sometimes these miniature games, they're so big, they can't be contained in a single episode, even if that episode is 3 hours long. Right, Craig?
Right, that's right.
Exactly. So before we get to all that, though, we should talk a little bit about the lost chapters we ran into, Sean, at Dunkin' Donuts. And Sean, do you remember what we spoke about?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, well, it's the cosmic donut shop at the middle of the universe. So
it is indeed. And Sean, do you remember the topic we discussed while we were at Dunkin'?
I think we talked something about donuts and also making stuff. I think it was like maybe art related.
Was the making stuff involved?
Yes, it was. It was about the inspiration for art and artwork. It was really interesting discussion. I really enjoyed it. And so if you'd like to hear that,
I would say it was one of the most fun discussions about art I've had in a long time.
Oh, that's very insightful.
Inspiring.
It was inspiring. It was almost inspirational. It was like breathing life into a topic.
Ooh, I see what you did there.
It was like setting a topic.
That's Russ. That's Russ synthesizing and using new knowledge in less than 5 minutes.
Or thrusting a spear into the belly of ideation.
Nothing like thrusting.
Just like
although
that.
you get bonus points for the use of the word ideation, however.
Yeah, I'm at a conference now, so I'm learning all the buzzwords again. They're fresh. They're right fresh. So so if you'd like to listen to the lost chapters and get involved, Craig, how does one go about doing that?
Well, there's a couple ways, Russ, and they're all going to lead you to the same spot. You could go to patreon.com, search for the D6 Generation. It's going to bring you right there to that page. It's going to explain all about it. If you go to the D6generation.com, find the Patreon button, you click on that. That's going to bring you to the webpage. It's going to explain to you all about it. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to, you like the show so much, you have so little taste, actually, that you're going to kick a little tip into the tip jar to help us keep the show rolling. And
Exactly.
if you tip $2 or more into that little tip jar per episode, you will unlock the mystery and wonder that is the entire Lost Chapter vault.
It is full of mystery and wonder. And so thank you to all our patrons for supporting that. Yep. And what's the time now for Craig?
It is right now time for
Achievements in Gaming.
It is indeed. And of course, Achievements is brought to us by all of our awesome fans over at Patreon there, keeping the lights on and joining us here in the chat room. Like, let's see who's in the chat room right now. Let me take a look here. We've got Kyle and Andy and Sean. So it's small but dedicated crew today. So we appreciate that. So Sean, what have you been playing lately? What board games, card games, RPGs, things like that?
Oh, I've been playing Saga. And that's been super fun. I really like that.
Now,
and
are you playing the second edition?
Yeah, I never played the first edition. I wanted to get into it, but then on all the message boards, everyone was like, "They're making a new edition. Don't bother." So I've been like patiently waiting, and now I jumped on it and I bought a whole bunch of armies. I've been playing that.
What are you playing predominantly?
I started with the Age of Invasion, which is like all of Rome era. And I got an Ostrogoth army, so it's all mounted barbarians, and then also a late Roman army. So those two fighting.
So nice.
Yeah.
You got the Gauls and the Romans. Do you have Asterisk and Obelix in there? Because that'd be awesome.
No, that's the wrong era.
Oh, the wrong Gaul. Right. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm doing the Goths, which is
okay.
more different, like Germanic horse peoples. So it's a lot of fun. And then I also got some Vikings, of course, for the Viking Age.
Well, you gotta have Vikings.
Then I've also been playing Arena Rex, which is always fun to throw down.
Yeah.
And then over the weekend, I played a bunch of this game called Golden Eye. And it's a game where you play as James Bond.
Oh, like the old NES game.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah,
is it the NES game or are you playing a board game?
It's N64.
Oh, is it? Nice.
Yeah,
you're going old school.
Yeah, we dove into our like nostalgia and played just tons and tons of a terrible first person shooter that was also the best.
It is one of the best, of course. Does it stand up nicely or is it kind of
dated? No. But you can mess with the game settings and do weird things, and I think that's where the fun is. Getting like one hit kills with throwing knives and things like that.
So wow, so that is that's really awesome. So now let me ask you this about Arena Rex. Which models are you enjoying painting more? The Arena Rex models. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Yeah. So, but I have a reason for this that will become apparent later. So are you enjoying painting the Arena Rex models more or the Saga models more?
Ooh, man, they couldn't be more different.
Right. That's why I'm asking.
That's a very fun comparison because I got a footsore army and also a plastic gripping beast army. So those two are very different. But they're they're very simple. And then once you paint them, and painting the shield really brings them to life because you get a lot of color and fun design in there. Whereas obviously the Arena Rex models are like super detailed, really high quality sculpts. And like, I think I mentioned it last time, maybe I didn't, but I'm a big fan of Patrick Mason, the sculptor. He did a lot of the Arena Rex models. So I like going deep and painting those. Cool. But yeah, I don't know. They're so different. They scratch a different itch because I painted my whole late Roman army in one sitting.
Wow.
Wow. How many models are in that?
Yeah, it was only 4 points. So like 28 or something. But then, with Arena Rex, like you can paint them all at once, but they're $18 a piece. So you should get it.
Right.
Yeah,
you want to savor it.
My whole army for Saga was $30. So.
Oh, wow.
That's a deal.
Yeah. The all metal footsore army, which is more, the more fancy, is like 120 or so. So, so they still aren't super expensive. I spent way more than that on Arena Rex to get 8 models.
Now, I have a question for you, Sean. 2 years ago at Adepticon, I was looking into Saga because I was like deep into the Viking TV show and really wanted a game that would at least like kind of scratch that itch a little bit. And I was kind of put off by the cost of the dice, I think.
I don't own Saga dice.
Okay. Now, don't you have to play?
The breakdown is super simple. A 6 is one face. A 4 and a 5 is another face, and then a 1, 2, and 3 is another face. So there are only 3 faces, and so like after you can look right on your back to see which face is 6. So I just use D6s.
Okay.
Because I'm not gonna because I want to play a bunch of different factions, so I'm not gonna buy 30.
And the dice set costs like $50, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just so for listeners, basically what you have to do, and for correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, because I know it's a second edition, and I was just vaguely familiar with the first edition. But you have a sheet for your army that has all the different order options on it, and you're rolling dice, and the results of the dice basically get allocated to the various options that you could do, and then that's what's going to give you your choices for that turn, right? Basically.
Yeah, it's like if you're commanding an army, unlike some like the position you're in is different. Whereas with Relicblade or Warhammer or whatever, when you activate a unit, you have command of that unit as if you are the unit. Whereas with Saga, you are the warlord, and then any resources, they're like command resources in a way, where like you have to be able to communicate to your troops and get them to do stuff. Yeah. So the Saga dice kind of show you like how well under command your units are, and then you can use the different dice faces to perform special abilities to get them to perform shield wall tactics or whatever. But it's very engaging that way. I could see it bogging down a little bit if your opponent is having a hard time deciding how they want to spend their dice. But otherwise, it turns into a very like winds of magic situation where sometimes you've got to work with what you have, and it's very fun and dynamic that way.
Right. Yeah. And that's like being the guy that I am, where I need the dice that match my faction. That was the problem that I was running into, was I couldn't quite decide which factions I wanted, and I couldn't justify spending that much money. And I hadn't thought about just trying to figure out the dice facings and stuff, because as you said, every and I guess they're the symbols are all they're all different, but the breakdown of how many on each facing and everything, those are all the same, right?
Yeah, so, it's all the same. It's basically like a rare, uncommon, and common outcome.
And so, like, Roman might have a scutum shield, and the Viking might have like a fish symbol, but they're ultimately going to mean the same thing on the thing.
Yeah, no, the Vikings have runes, obviously.
Oh, runes, right. Sorry, I was thinking.
I don't know. I highly recommend that game. It's very, very neat. I love history, so I get really excited about it. Just thinking about, oh man, this is like a border clash between a late Roman army against Goths, and so I like nerd out hardcore on that stuff. It's very exciting to my imagination.
That's awesome.
It sounds
that's really cool. So, Craig, how about yourself, sir? What have you been playing?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. Not even a single game.
And it's insane considering how long it's been since we have recorded our last achievements. But I have done. I did bring Not So Fast.
Oh, you carried a game.
Carried a game to Florida, but that was because I highly underestimated Disney's ability to keep an entire family entertained for an entire 7-day sojourn in Orlando. So
yeah, it's pretty much nonstop.
Yeah, it was insane, especially if you're staying on the property. There's stuff to do the whole time. I had a blast. It was awesome. Russ helped hugely in with Karen setting everything up, and I'd love at some point to talk about how great it was, maybe in a lost chapter, I don't know, but that's pretty much all I have for games played.
Well, I'm glad you had a lovely Disney adventure, which is not a game, but it's kind of a game because it's all fun.
Yeah, it's all fun.
But I've only played 2, but I have an interesting story. So we had another long session of my D&D campaign that I've been playing now and talking about on the show here for some time. So this is the one I'm running. It's the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. Both my daughters are playing it. My niece and nephew are playing it. My brother's been playing it. And we've been playing this campaign now literally since the fall. Since D&D 5th edition came out. So literally like the month that it came out, we started this and been playing it ever since.
Hang on. Did you say you've been playing it since 5th edition came out?
Yes.
That's amazing. I could keep going.
So we've been going for a while, and my daughters are 15 and 14 now, so they've been playing this game since they were like however long fifth edition's been out, since they're like 12 or whatever. So they've been playing it a while, and we've had our first character death. And it was really, I have to share this story because it is literally my proudest moment as a dungeon master in any campaign I've ever been involved in. Because what happened here, and this is just a hair of a spoiler in the campaign setting that we're doing this, which is, the premise of this, and you just have to understand the premise to really understand the magnitude of what happened, because it was like a soap opera. So, but I want to share this. We don't have a lot of games to report, and I think you guys will enjoy this. So one of the things is the overall story is that this cult of the dragon is trying to bring Tiamat back from the 9 planes of hell to the prime material plane, where she can then, of course, reign terror, bring all power to the dragons, blah, 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 right? That's the main plot. Not a spoiler. You know that from the very first beginning of the first module. So that's going on, right? And the characters have been campaigning against it. Well, you discover, and this is the small spoiler, you discover that there are these different dragon masks, and there's different masks of each color to match one of Tiamat's heads. And you don't know exactly what they're doing with them, but the cult has them. So they had a brief moment earlier in the campaign where they could have got their hands on the black dragon mask, but it slipped through their fingers. So they were frustrated by that, but whatever. So then now, later in the campaign, they actually did manage to get their hands on and recover the white dragon mask. And it cost them an arm and a leg. They had to was involved in a bribery situation. Long story short, they got the dragon mask, and it's in this box that you have to have a fingerprint. It's a magically locked box. You need a fingerprint to unlock the box. And the paladin in the party, my nephew, he has this box, and only his thumbprint unlocks it. And so the mask is in there. Now, the other thing you need to know about this situation is that my oldest daughter, she plays this character called Oriana, who is a tiefling warlock. And the paladin and the warlock don't get along, mostly because the warlock consorts with demons. Also, throughout the entire campaign, she's kind of played this little loosey-goosey character where she's never really lied to the party, but things just sort of disappear and things happen with them. So I set this situation up where when they acquired the white dragon mask, they had to pay a lot of their money for this thing. And they came into a lot of money. Not going to go into how they did that, but they had a lot of money, but they basically spent 5,000 gold, pretty much their entire nest egg, on the deal to get the dragon mask back. And their initial plan was to sell the dragon mask back to some good forces who are they're kind of riding the line between good and evil. But the thing about this is the paladin is a vengeance paladin, so it gives them a little bit of latitude, right? So they're going to try to sell this thing back, but this is before. So it's kind of funny. So going into this session, they pretty much have all been telling me on the side, we're going to sell this dragon mask. We're going to get 10 grand for it. We're going to double our money, and the good guys are going to have to pay us for it because they still want us to go after the cult, blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I'm thinking that's the last thing that's actually going to happen, because before the game starts, they all get these little visions in various situations. Now, what the party doesn't know, and this is a little bit of an inside background. So when the characters gave me their backgrounds, my oldest daughter's background was she has made this pact with a greater demon, warlock. And the greater demon the thing about this is the demons don't want Tiamat to return. Demons don't like Tiamat. Devils don't like Tiamat. Lots of people don't like Tiamat. So even though they're evil, they don't want Tiamat there. So her demon patron says, you got to get this white dragon mask. Okay. And if you do that for me, I won't do this bad thing to you that I've been threatening to do to you forever. And it's going to happen to you on your 21st birthday, which is only a few months away. But I won't do that to you for another couple of years if you do this favor for me. Get the dragon mask and give it to these devils, right? Now, this is still an anti-Tiamat maneuver, but it's dealing with the forces of darkness, which, so she starts to socialize this idea. Maybe she could, the rest of the party's like, no way are you getting your hands even near this mask. They don't know why she wants it, but she's not getting it. Meanwhile, the wizard has a chance to touch the mask and realizes how powerful it is. So now he wants to keep it. And meanwhile, Bahamut gives a vision to the Vengeance Paladin who worships Bahamut and basically says, you got to keep this mask close to you because it'll help you later in some future way. It's very vague. It's intentionally, religious vision, very vague. So going into this now, there's this different pull in the party, and there's another vision that the druid has about this mask too. So there's 4 different people now trying to get this mask for different reasons. So what I'm really anticipating is a giant debate in this game where the different party members are vying for getting to use the mask for their particular purpose. The wizard wants to probably keep it because it's powerful. The paladin needs it for Bahamut. The druid needs it for her own purposes. And of course, the warlock. It's going to be this nice big debate. That's not at all what happens. What actually happens is in some kind of crazy Ocean's 12 level stuff. My daughter manages to pull off the greatest theft I have ever seen in D&D history. Now, they're staying together because they figure the cult is trying to scry them and find the mask. So they're staying together. They're avoiding the cult, and they're moving around town trying to get ready for the next assignment and keep the mask safe. And while they're doing this, she is trying to sneak off and do different things. And so she tries to sneak off first. And so I'm making them make all these perception checks. Now, the party thinks they're making perception checks because they're being scried or being spied on by the cult. But what actually is happening is the warlock is up to all kinds of shenanigans. And so first she manages to slip away without anybody noticing, gets a Mardi Gras mask and gets a mask that's the same size and weight of the dragon mask. Then while the party's sleeping, now the first mistake the party make was they left the box on the paladin's body, right? So she sends in a Quasit, which is her familiar, and he manages to, with a bunch of rolls that are crazy good, like the rolling going on is nuts, like natural 20s and all kinds of craziness. He managed to get in there while the paladin's still asleep and get the paladin's thumbprint on the box, open the box while it's in the paladin's possession, switch the masks, and get it to the warlock. The warlock then gets the mask, and then as they're getting ready to go on their next mission, she slips away again, rolling a natural 20. A natural 20. So they're in the middle of this market. She slips away with a natural 20. There's no way anybody's going to notice her. So everybody makes a check. The ranger makes a natural 20 to see if she's left. And so I'm like, well, crap. Okay, so you notice she's gone. So they're like, she's gone. And so they're immediately like, oh my God, Oriana's gone. Someone check the mask. And the paladin's like, don't worry, I got the box right here. He's tapping his hip. And so then the ranger and the druid look at each other and they're like, open the box. Just open the box. Mm-hmm. Now, the paladin has like the worst perception known to man, right? Every time he rolls a perception check, he fails. So he's in a crowded area. He probably doesn't want the cult to spot him. So he's just cracking the box open. So there's a pretty good chance he's not going to notice that the white Mardi Gras mask, peeking in there, isn't the actual dragon mask. So he makes his perception check, natural 20. So he's like, I'm like, you can clearly tell it's a toy mask in your box. And he's like, what? And they immediately freak out. They're like, that's it. It's Oriana. Where is she? And they're like, she's gone. So then, and this is the thing, like, and she slipped away. She's rolled like an 18 to get away. She's a city urchin. She's really good in the crowds. Meanwhile, the ranger with her dog rolls another natural 20 to track her. So the dog's got her scent. So they're going after her. The party's pissed. At this point, the wizard, who's my brother, the wizard is like, that's it. She's dead. This is the last time she screwed up. So he's like, she's dead. So they chase her down into the sewers. They find her in the middle of the transaction with the devils. She's in the middle of making the exchange. They don't even think about what they're up against. There's a bone devil and there's 7 barb devils here. The challenge rating on that is like a 12. They're not even ready to fight this. And I didn't expect them to try to fight this. I figured they don't even think. They're so mad with fury. They're so pissed off at her. They just start fighting, and they start fighting the bone devils. They're getting badly wounded, but the entire time they're actually attacking her. So long story short, the devils get away with the mask. The party doesn't know where the mask is exactly, but the devils get away with the mask. The warlock never actually fights them, the party, but the party's continually attacking her. She goes down, she gets back up with a natural 20 again on her on one of her death checks. So she gets back up. The paladin charges her, and she looks in the paladin's eye and is like, please give me a chance to explain. You don't understand. It's not what it looks like. He falters and doesn't swing at her. But then the wizard's like, no, you've had your last chance, drops her down. And then we had to break because the game was literally ending right there. So we're breaking. The pizza comes. We got to break. And they're so pissed off. They're like, we're killing her. I'm cutting her throat. And the druid's like, no, wait. And he's like, if you're not with us, you're against us. And so I said, okay, I want to end here, but I need the energy. I want the passion right now. So she is dead. But next game, I want to role play exactly who's standing where while you cut her throat. Because she's literally on the ground, unconscious, and they're cutting her throat and killing her. Right. So this is happening right now to my daughter's character. And it's kind of awesome.
Our podcast is now rated R.
This is what's cool about this scene is everybody believes they are absolutely right. Mm-hmm. The paladin believes he's absolutely right because he's got a vision from a god. And by the way, when he had his vision from the god, Lucius, the wizard who is not a religious person, is like, no one else. Do you believe in a god? Do you believe in a god? The only person who believes in a god is the paladin. He's had a vision from his god. We got to do what he says. So he's like made it in his religious fervor. Meanwhile, the warlock's just trying to save her own bacon and still fight Tiamat because she'll bring the doubles against Tiamat. So she's not betraying the party necessarily. She's just not agreeing with the use of the mask of the paladin. It obvious, but arguably in a very sort of sneaky and inappropriate way. But she's dead. I mean, she's dead now. But the best part is there's a whole side plot that I can't reveal because I'm afraid if one of the party members listens to this, it'll reveal some things. But the cool part is my daughter is playing this to the hilt. So she's actually not upset. So she's already rolled up her new character, but she's built an entire shrine to her old character. She's got the incense. She's got a little thing for her. She's got the old figure. She's got it all set up. And she's going to come to the table and she's going to have this whole thing where she's going to guilt trip the hell out of everybody for killing her. It's fantastic. But I've never seen someone like actively murder another party member.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And the best part. And the best part was, and it is murder because it's cold-blooded killing because she's out cold. Now, the thing that's funny is he's a vengeance paladin. So you can't really fault a vengeance paladin for this. But you kind of could, because the tricky part on this is a DM from the lawful good, lawful evil thing is, would a lawful good character, right? Or he's lawful neutral because he's a vengeance paladin. But would a lawful character kill someone in cold blood, or will they at least like make them challenge them to a death duel or something? Like, you know what I mean? Like just killing in cold blood is like a little different than killing them in battle. So it's kind of like it's created this little moral quandary that I'm kind of working through with the characters. But I just thought it was really an intense scene. And it, days after everybody's talking about it. And so the next session is this coming Saturday where we're going to see what actually happens. And I'm really curious if the druid, who's my youngest daughter, if she's on board with this whole thing. And if she's not, is it going to cause a huge schism in the party? So more on this to come, but this was such a cool, I was just excited as a DM because everybody believes, like the warlock believes she's doing the right thing in the long term. The paladin believes she's doing the right thing. The wizard believes he's doing but the wizard's just pissed. So my brother's just pissed off really at this point, but it was hilarious. So the whole thing was really cool. And I was really proud that it got that crazy. So we'll see what happens next, but I don't know if anybody out there has ever had a party member murdered by another party member like this, but my brother gets offended if I call it murder too, so I can't call it murder. I have to call it. God bless. I don't know. I don't know, Craig. What would you call that?
It sounded like murder to me.
So if someone betrays you, I mean, doesn't like kill you, betray you, or kill a friend, but they go behind your back and steal from you.
Right. Here's the deal. Did you kill them in battle in hot blood?
No, that's the worst part. She went down. She's unconscious after the battle.
Yeah, I've got to err on the side of that being murder.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly. I don't want to
murder is because someone was betrayed.
Yeah. So it's an awkward. It's a really thing. Now he is chaotic neutral, so I don't think I need to worry about his alignment. But the lawful neutral vengeance paladin, I'm a little iffy on if that's the lawful or not. Like I'm not sure even a lawful evil character would just cut your throat. He would kind of like, wake you up and want you to suffer in battle, with a disadvantage or something. But I don't know. I'm working through this, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting situation. So I had to share that. And the other game we played, so I'm unfortunately like Craig, I haven't been able to get to gaming on Tuesdays, but I'm playing a lot of games with my family. So I got the D&D session's been a blast. And then we just played this game Charterstone. Have you guys tried Charterstone yet?
No.
So Charterstone is a legacy game, meaning that it changes permanently when you play it. But it's a worker placement sort of civilization. That's not a civ builder. It's sort of a worker placement land game. So basically, the premise is there's this king, and you've all been dispatched to this, and you each are building your little colonies together. And there's a section of the board. When the game starts off, the board is very empty. And you're going to be placing stickers on the board. So you're basically creating zones in each of the little kingdoms that are places you can place your workers. So you might start off with a wood mill that eventually updates to a wood factory. Another player might have stone, like this. And so you're putting your little wooden workers on these things to take action. It's a very simple mechanics, but really interesting game. And you're also gaining then these cards, which give you allies to do things, and you can name the cards in pen as you get them. So it's it's a little Seafall-y. It reminds me a little bit of Seafall, but I like it. It's got stronger, simpler mechanics than Seafall and easy to learn. And there's already been some interesting twists. So I'm really looking forward to playing this more, and I'll report more on it. But I have to say the art is great. My whole family loved it. My wife loved it. The girls loved it. And that's Charterstone. And I want to thank a listener at Adepticon recommended it to me. And I finally picked it up, and I am really, really enjoying it. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name now, so I apologize. But I'm really enjoying Charterstone. It is a lot of fun. I highly recommend it as a family or just a game with other gamers, because it's one of those games that evolves. The only downside is you really want the same group of people over and over again, because it is one of those games that each game it changes and evolves, and your characters change and evolve as well. So it's pretty cool. All right, so that's gaming. What about modeling? I think Sean, you already kind of revealed some of the models you're painting. Any other models besides the Arena Rex or Saga?
I think I've been trying to work through my models like following or systematically, and so I'm trying to stick to my 2 Saga armies and get them finished before I move on. But I also got a Dark Age starter set, or not starter set, but like a faction set, and for the new Brood models. And those models are so awesome, and the casts are super clean resin. I really
nice.
I'm excited about those. So I've been fiddling around with that a bit. But yeah, mostly painting Goths and Romans right now, and gluing together a bunch of Vikings.
Oh, very nice. How about yourself, Greg?
Nothing. I was gonna say, I envy your dedication, Sean, and your focus.
Yeah, I like it.
I've been trying to put a little more paint on my 2 Dropfleet fleets. I've got the P8, the Post-Human Republic coming along, and the Scourge. And I mean, that's literally one session of painting is all I've got. But I did pick up a mat, Russ, so that next time we play, we'll be on a legit 4x4, cool looking mat. I went with mats by Mars because orbital mats are a lot more expensive than the other kinds of game mats right now. I don't know why. Like you're talking like $130, $140 for a 4x4, which is a lot. I almost went with inked play mats again, which is where I got my mats for X-Wing and Armada. But it's a lot harder to find free, super high resolution satellite pictures of Earth than it was to find satellite pictures of the stars. So ultimately, I went with mats by Mars, which they're vinyl, which I haven't used vinyl before, but it costs a lot less than the mouse.
And I think I'm not crazy about vinyl, but I think in a sci-fi setting, there's something more comforting, or I feel more comfortable about vinyl and sci-fi, because if it's it's I don't know, spaceships,
right? And it's got a texture to it that I'm not super. I would prefer the mouse pad material, I think, because it's all unified, and the vinyl has kind of a little crosshatch section of texture a little bit to it. The image is beautiful, and so I think it's going to be great. So I'm excited about that. And I got all the flight stands we needed. TT Combat, the company that now produces Dropfleet, was great about getting us the flight stems and widgets for all the things that we have. So we are good to go on that. And that's all I've got for that. What about you, Russ? You still have that giant thing in your garage.
So Tiamat now, the non-IP infringing multi-heading dragon that I got from Reaper Bones a while ago. After Adepticon, I got it primed, and I've been painting it slowly. So I've got basically it's base coated. So the red parts are red, the leathery wings are leathery, and the various heads are the correct colors. Although I had to debate a little bit because none of the heads quite match sort of the D&D horn structures of the various colored dragons. So I actually had a big debate with my D&D group about which heads they thought were the blue and black and white dragons. But we got those. What's that?
I said, ooh.
Yeah, because you in D&D, I forget, the white doesn't really have horns, but it has a sort of a fin, but they didn't really have the heads. It was close enough, right? But anyway, they look awesome. So I got all those colors done. Now I just got to do. I want to go one more time to get the colors to pop a little more, and then I want to do start doing the teeth and the eyes and all the details. So I'm really pleased with how it's looking. It's definitely a great model, and I have it when we're playing. I have it on my behind my Dungeon Master screen, and whenever the party does something that is an error, like lose the black dragon mask, the model moves closer to them, and when they do something good, the model moves away. So it's kind of like Tiamat's coming. So almost though. So what they don't know is the warlock's involved with trying to keep a greater demon from coming to the prime material plane. So I might need to get a giant demon model now also to have coming and going. I'm not sure yet.
That'll be fun.
Oh yeah, just more the merrier, I say. Also been painting the Dropfleet Commander stuff. So I got some frigates, Craig.
Yes,
I sent you my picture, so I'm very excited about those.
Never have too many frigates.
No, you really can't. And I goofed up, so I didn't catch when I first assembled the models that came in the core game. I didn't catch that there's minimum squadron sizes, so I made some onesies models that I actually can't field because they need to have pairs. So the squadron box really helps me get the right sized squadron. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
which
also,
faction are you putting together?
I'm playing the UP. No, what are they, Craig? The UNC.
UCM.
I think
Unified.
UCM.
UCM. Unified Colonies of Man.
Yes. I get my human acronyms all backwards, but yes. So UCM. So basically the well, I don't know if they're good guys, the humans, right?
Yeah.
The normal humans, the not genetically enhanced humans, which Craig's playing.
Right.
So they're really cool. I love the ships. And then also, I just want to let you guys know, have you guys seen this? So I was trying to find, so in addition to my D&D campaign, I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, my brother started his D&D campaign, which I get to be a player in, which is fun. And so now what we do is instead of having to have me have 7 hours of material every time we sit down, I play for about 3 or 4 hours and we switch off and we play his campaign. And what's been fun about that is we're making up characters. So we were all using some of the races from the newer books. And one of them is the, I forget what they're called in 5th edition now, but it's the cat people. So you can be a cat person now. And unfortunately, it's really hard to find cat people models. Like they're not really very common. So have you guys heard of Shapeways?
Yeah.
Have you seen this? So Shapeways is a 3D printing company that does the 3D printing for you. And they have really high-end, high-quality 3D printers. And they have a library, a catalog of shapes they can do, but then you can also pretty much upload any of those cool shapes that are out there for people who own 3D printers, and they'll print it for you and send it to you for a small fee, of course. And when I was Googling this, I found that Shapeways had some of these cool cat figures. And so I've ordered several now from them because they had some very unique models that you can't really find from any of the major miniature manufacturers. And I was really pleased with I was looking for my niece is playing a cat. I can't remember if it was a thief or a bard. We haven't played very much yet, but it was a great find there. So I was really pleased with Shapeways because you're getting a lot more variety out there. So it's kind of neat to see more and more people can just design crazy sculpts in, using a CAD program and throw them out there on Shapeways or throw them down on Thingiverse. And all of a sudden everybody can get it themselves, either print it themselves or use Shapeways. So it's a pretty nice tool. If you haven't been to Shapeways website, check it out. It's a lot of cool models out there.
Cool.
And that's my modeling. What about, movies, books, TV shows? Sean, you been watching any of that stuff?
Yeah, I recently watched a movie called China Salesman.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is just super crazy. It's got Steven Seagal versus Mike Tyson.
Oh,
and
what?
Which was an awesome fight scene that lasted like 1 minute in the beginning, and then the rest was Chinese propaganda. Really remarkable. The whole movie was like just so terrible, but we enjoyed the heck out of it. There's like a scene where they're under attack by these rebels, and then the China salesman grabs his China flag, and when he puts up the China flag, the rebels all just start cheering, and then it ends the fight because everyone loves China. It's just so good. And the plot is about a telecom salesman. And man, it's definitely the best movie I've ever watched about telecoms.
Nice.
I watched that. And then we watched the new Blade Runner movie, and we watched, Mad Max Fury Road. We watched a whole bunch of cool movies this weekend.
Oh, those are fun ones. All those I enjoyed all those.
Yeah. I think we just loaded up all the coolest movies that have come out recently.
Fantastic.
Cool.
How about you, Craig? What have you been reading and watching?
Well, let's see. I am still churning through the Powder Mage trilogy.
Yeah, which book are you in now?
I'm in the third book, The Autumn Republic. Of course, we're talking about Brian McClellan's series, narrated by the great Christian Rodska.
Mm-hmm.
Is a great narrator.
Awesome.
And it's a really cool series. They've created a really cool world. My only niggling little complaint is some of the names that he comes up with are like, what? But like Manhooch, King Manhooch.
Well, you know.
I mean, they can't all be Gandalf, you know. They can't all be Aragorn. But no, I love the story. I love the characters. Really enjoying that. There's a let's see. There's a pattern about to form. So I'm watching, really enjoying The Expanse. Oh, really enjoying this really cool new show that just started, The Crossing. Oh,
yeah.
Super enjoyed Jean-Claude Van Johnson. Oh, so pretty much everything I watch right now is dying.
All of those shows were canceled. In case you didn't figure that out.
All of those shows were canceled. We're living in a bloody time period right now. I don't remember any cancellation season being this hard to bear in a long time. It seems like a lot of sci-fi stuff is getting axed.
I would be surprised if Netflix didn't pick up The Expanse.
Well, that's a fairly new phenomenon too. So we'll see. But that does seem to be a prevalent thought, and that would be cool.
Yeah.
That would kind of it would unlock them from their very unfortunate. The one thing I don't like about sci-fi, almost every show on sci-fi knows which swear words they can get away with, and there's only 2, and so every other sentence they're going to use it, man. And you're like, first of all, Avasarala should be using way saltier language. And it's funny because the characters refer to her as having a crazy vocabulary, but they don't even try to they don't even do, like a Samuel L. Jackson kind of mother and then fade away or anything like that. So that's weird. So I think it would be very, very cool for a variety of reasons on Netflix. But right now, it's in limbo. I
like that the first thing you went to was, if they got it on Netflix, those curse words, they could really just.
Well, it's not so much that.
Swear.
It's not so much that. It's that I hate that they feel like they have to do it on sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need any swear words for these shows at all, other than one character who is that's one of the core facets of her character. But they feel like we can use the SH word. We're gonna do it every time, and so it's like, well, at least get a little variety in there if you're gonna be on Netflix. I did not in any way, and longtime listeners know that I'm not a big fan of using swear words unless there's a specific reason for it. But it's just a thing that I've noticed. They decided they could use the SH word like 2 years ago, and now it just crops up everywhere, and it's the one curse every character uses.
It's the one swear word, right?
It's the one they're allowed.
Right.
Let's see. Westworld, I finally figured out how to get to my HBO on our Hulu device. So I started watching that. That's good. I'm enjoying the second.
Now, the second season, is it? I wish it was moving a little faster.
Yeah,
I find it a little too slow.
Episode 1, so.
Okay. All right.
I get so frustrated with those miniseries because I feel like they have a story that would realistically fit in a certain time frame, but they know they have to make 10 episodes. And so no matter how interesting the story is, it has to be 10 hours long. That was one thing that hit me with Westworld is like, man, it could have been so good in 3 episodes, like really intense. But instead they're like, well, we need a couple more hours.
Well, I want to spoil something here from season 1. Because I want to. So I'm going to.
I'll allow
what's
it.
That?
I said season 1. Okay, I'll allow it.
So here's what I'm spoiling. So if you don't want to hear this, fast forward 10 seconds. But you know how the big reveal at the end of season 1 was that the whole season was out of time?
Yes.
So that you're watching the same person when he was old and young. Like that was the big thing, right? Yeah. Season 2, it's obvious they're doing it again. And it's almost annoying because they're doing it, but they're almost doing it so much that it's becoming hard to follow. Like, because they're doing it, it's almost like, okay, the trick was good the first time when it was subtle, but now it's kind of blatant.
Oh, I get it. I can kind of see that from that first episode now that you say that, because I was assuming that we were talking like perhaps a difference of a couple days. But that didn't.
I don't. That's my theory. But you wait to see episode 2; it gets more obvious in episode 2.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, let me.
What you're saying is the one show that we're left with doesn't hold water now.
No, I like it. Still, I'm enjoying it a lot. I can't wait to see what happens. But I think that I think you need to change your trick each season if you're going to have a trick like that.
Oh, I think
right. Unless the producers are just like, this is because it's kind of like the a shift on the Dunkirk thing where they different perspectives, same scene. Yeah. It's kind of like that for different times, which was cool the first time, but maybe that's their shtick. No, I don't know.
I hope not. So, I hope it's a red herring, but who knows?
Maybe it is. It could be. That would be cool if it was not out of sequence. That'd be really interesting. That would be.
Let's see. I went and saw Infinity War 2, and I want to see it at least one more time, but I don't know with Deadpool and Solo and everything else coming down the pike.
I know.
There's lots to see.
Yeah. Oh, there is. It's hard to keep up now.
It is.
Yeah.
Everything that's dying on TV seems to be being replaced by a cool thing in the movies right now.
It's okay. I saw Infinity War twice as well. It was awesome. I loved it.
I saw it 0 times. If we could just get a better distribution of how many times we've seen it.
Maybe if you could have
half a little bit.
We're averaging out to what? Slightly more than once per person.
More than once per person, right?
And then I did. I'm going to put this down here because at least it's sort of game related. Because I could do it at school. I finished my Dropfleet cheat sheet. And I'm super excited. On the front page, it has everything you need to play the game. And on the back, it has all of the references to all the different special rules and then all the deployment rules and stuff like that. So I'm very excited about that. Can't wait to get a game in, Russ, so we can see if this works.
Yes.
I think I located one
next
thing.
Tuesday.
Yeah, that should work for me.
Sweet.
Yep. So there you go. And then I have begun. I had a very good April. All right. Ooh. And the fantasy novel that I wrote got picked up by Wing to Sar. Wing to Sar asked me to write a sequel for the sci-fi book Legacy of Shadow. So I'm super excited about that. So if you haven't read that, go read it now because there's going to be a sequel. And nice. They have begun an awesome, really, really ambitious project at Wing to Sar that I'm kind of in the middle of that I can't wait to talk more about. I can't talk about it other than the fact that it's starting now. It's stretching multiple authors and all kinds of different groups coming together. It's going to be very, very cool, I think. And I am completely creatively engaged in that. And I can't wait to see where that goes. But that's all I can say about it now. But watch here, Twitter, and elsewhere for news on that as soon as I can start talking about it.
Stay tuned for more.
Exactly. What about you, Russ?
Well, for books, we already talked about Powder Mage series. I'm in book 2, so I'm a little behind Craig, but I'm really enjoying it. Shows, I did finish several series, and I'm happy to report all the series I'm currently enjoying have another series coming. So, what's that?
I said that.
I'm just taunting you, Craig.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So, Lost in Space, I enjoyed Lost in Space a lot. I really thought it was good. The series of unfortunate events. If you've not watched this show, you really should. It's a Netflix series. I just finished season 2. There is a season 3, and season 3 will be the last season. In fact, Neil Patrick Harris, who plays the main bad guy there, he just tweeted out that he recorded his last. They wrapped season 3, and it's done. That ends the season or the whole story, which is great because it needs a beginning, middle, the end because that's how the books are. Mm-hmm. But it is really enjoying it. The performances in there are insane. The visuals are insane. It's just a great show. Yep. And then also, we finished the second season of the Santa Clarita Diet, which if you've not seen this show, you also need to watch that show. It also has been renewed. So all of those are great. Word of warning.
That Netflix?
Yes, all 3 of those are on Netflix as well. So if you have Netflix, you got all 3 of those. Yeah. We already talked about Westworld. Sad about The Expanse. And I'm also still enjoying The Full Metal Alchemist. So my daughters and I have been watching that whenever my wife travels, which since she's a journalist, it's a good bit. So we watched that, and it's been fantastic. Where there's like a bajillion episodes of that. I think there's like 50 or 45 episodes, and we're on episode like 30 something. But we really are enjoying that series. In the video game front, still really enjoying the heck out of the latest God of War game. So that is just great storytelling. Highly recommend it. And as Craig mentioned, we've watched Infinity War twice, and I cannot wait for Solo. And I'm super jealous of my wife because she got to go to the world premiere. And I just have to say this, not to brag about my wife, but just to let all you fellow geeks out there understand how how jealous I am. So my wife is an automotive journalist. Nissan because the Nissan Rogue had to deal with Star Wars from Rogue One, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, the Solo movie is coming out. They invited a bunch of journalists to fly out to the world premiere, like the big one, the red carpet one.
The one
where they
Millennium Falcon out front.
Yes, the giant, like she walked under the giant Millennium Falcon, just so you know.
Yeah.
So she's out there, and how this works is they have 4 different theaters they show it at the same time because so many people come to the big premiere. So they say you're going to be going into the Dolby Surround Sound Theater, which is the one with the best sound. So as they're going in, and they get to go in early, like before anybody else. So they're in there, and they're like, "Well, we're probably not going to be in the one with all the cool stars, right? We'll be in the one with all the like press people or something. But wouldn't it be cool if it's got the best sound? You'd think John Williams would come maybe to this one because it's got the best sound, but we won't see him. So they're sitting there, and then sure enough, John Williams walks in. And then John Williams is walking, like literally, like you could reach out and touch him. He's walking right in front of him. And then he's like, "Hey, Jeff." And Jeff's like, "Hey, John." And it's Jeff Bezos, right? He's standing right there from Amazon. And then they're like, "Oh, look, it's George." And George Lucas walks in. And then before you know it, the entire cast is walking in. And because you have to put your phone inside of a secure bag, so you can't take any pictures because it's like world premiere of the movie, all the stars have let their hair down because no one can be taking any paparazzi pictures. So they're like stuffing their faces with popcorn, like whatever. But she like saw like everybody. It was like insane.
She saw, and was Khaleesi there?
Khaleesi walked right in front of her and said it was weird because she's super small. Like she's like the smallest. She's like the most beautiful woman she's ever seen, but she's also like super tiny. But the Mother of Dragons was there in person. The only original cast person who came was I'm blanking on his name. The guy that played the original Lando Calrissian was there. What's his name? I'm forgetting. But he was there. But she said it was amazing. She loved the movie, loved every minute of it. Can't wait to see it again. And my wife is a huge Star Wars nerd and, of course, a huge Han Solo fan. So if she liked it, I think that's a good sign for this thing. But, of course, I'm totally jealous because, it's like the 8-year-old Russ's dream to have done this. So, I was like, oh, my God, you were so lucky. So she had the most amazing experience ever. And I was sitting at home going, darn it. But anyway, I'm gled for her. So it was really cool.
Okay, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, right. So you have to, next time we go to dinner or something, Craig, you have to ask her all about it.
I want to hear all about it.
So anyway, is that achievement?
No, I've got one more thing.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
I want everybody to listen.
All right, here we go. What?
What is that saying?
Yeri?
What?
I don't know.
So you heard why? It's Yanny?
Yeah, Sean, what do you think
you hear, Sean?
Man, my goodness. One more time.
Okay, here it is.
Yellow? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're all in agreement. It's very fun. So you haven't heard this yet?
No.
Okay. This is the dress 2.0. If you remember the dress and nobody could agree on what color the dress was on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Right.
This is the new one that just came out yesterday, and apparently everybody's talking about it. I thought for sure you guys would have heard about it, but I'm very excited that you didn't. People who listen either hear Yanny or Laurel.
What?
And exactly. Okay. So I thought one of my students brought it to me yesterday, and she was like, "Man, what did you hear?" And I'm like, "I heard Yanny," and she was like, "Me too. Everybody else has Laurel." I'm like, "That's a lie. Nobody could possibly hear Laurel." And then I did it for my class, and 3/4 of the class was like, "Yep, that was Laurel." I'm like, "It wasn't Laurel." And then so I did it with Karen last night, and she was like, "That's Laurel." I'm like, "Now you're just garbage. That's ridiculous."
You're garbage.
Your own wife.
These were all quotes on Twitter, by the way. One person was like, "Anyone who says they hear Laurel is garbage." And so then we did it for my son, and he was like, "It's Yanny." I was like, "Yay, he hears what I hear." Then we did it at the lacrosse field. So these are all on my phone using the same file, right? Out in the open air at the lacrosse field, I would swear to God it said Laurel.
What?
It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
Oh no!
There's something weird going on with the sound waves, and that's what they say. The modulation is what dictates what each person hears.
or you're becoming trash.
Yeah.
I already was like, I'm right on the border anyway. So anyway, I was curious. I wanted to fit that into achievements. So, okay, now I'm done.
There you go. All right. So, phew, is that achievement?
That's achievements.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present... Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep. Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap. Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, I've got a beauty for my little phone here that I really, really like, and it is called Oddmar. Oddmar. And it's an iOS app. It might be available for Android. I honestly don't know, but it is such a fun little app. This app is, it's basically a side-scroller platformer. So really, you know, in terms of what it does, it's not doing anything super out there or necessarily innovative. It's just one of those games where the art style is perfect. You know, you got Vikings on Viking action, cute, but also bloody. Just, I love the art. I mean, right from the intro movie that welcomes you to the game, you are sucked right in to this wonderful game. And once you start playing it, it's even more fun. The screen where you click launch again, the almost like three-dimensional look of the land, and then of course Oddmar himself, the little Viking who becomes an outcast from his village and goes off to seek adventure and figure out what's going on. Slightly blessed by the Norse fairies, so it takes place. It's all Viking and Norse mythology, Norse culture, and you're going from place to place, just kind of bouncing around. It's got very simple controls. You're basically hopping with one thumb and moving with one thumb, and basically attacking with the other. Very, very simple. Lots of little puzzles. But the great thing about this game is it's not a freemium game or anything like that. You pay for it. I want to say it's like $2. It might be $3. Anyway, less than the price of a Starbucks coffee. That's sort of my rubric for these sorts of games. And I figure if I can get, 4 or 5 good hours out of a price of a cup of coffee, that's more entertainment than I got out of a cup of coffee. So I love this one. I got it on a trip the other day. Very entertaining. It's very warm. It's very welcoming. And the little side challenges really are engaging. Just a fun little one. If you like platformers, little distraction games, and you really appreciate good art and really nice warm storytelling as well, and great animation, I would definitely check out Oddmar on iOS. Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back. And since Sean here is on the show,
Yes.
and Sean, of course, is the creator, the man, the myth, the legend, the brain behind Relicblade, which Craig and I both got into at Adepticon. We thought we'd have to ask you a little bit, Sean, about the game, what got you inspired to build it, and all the different aspects, because you're basically involved in every single part.
Not involved. He is everything.
Right, you are. You are literally, you're not just like the designer, you're not just like the rules guy or the fluff guy or the sculptor or the artist. You're all of those people, which is really so before we get to all that, though, Sean, we have to ask every first-time third chair this one but important question, which is, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
I think it's fair to say that on a profoundly formative level, I am a gamer.
Wow, that was a very deep response, Craig. Not really surprised.
No, it's funny. It's a big part of who I am. It's
that how you self-identify? You wake up in the morning and you're like, a gamer awakens.
But now at this point, my goodness, it's it's all consuming.
I got it. It's got to be, right? Because you're running this whole thing. So what were some of your earliest games? Like, when was the moment where you went from young lad playing Monopoly to young lad realizing you're playing games a little different than maybe some of the other kids?
Yeah. So my brother is 9 years older than me. And for whatever reason,
is that still a thing?
It was and is 9 years advanced.
Funny how that doesn't change.
And my goodness, so he boldly was a nerd and played Dungeons and Dragons and read comic books and did all of that stuff. And it never occurred to me that stuff was uncool because my brother was the coolest thing in existence. So like just from the earliest time, I've been way into that stuff. And also, I have to credit my mom also because she was into Lord of the Rings and science fiction and dragons and stuff when she was a teenager. And so I'm like multiple generations of
nice. It runs in the family. That's awesome.
In my imagination of just like fantastical realms in my head.
In the blood.
Yeah, definitely.
So your older brother's playing D&D.
My mom definitely.
Was there family board game night ever there? You were playing games that are a little more in depth than the traditional ones?
No, not really.
Right.
It was mostly with friends. We'd get out riffs and try and figure out how it worked and roll dice and get lost in weird stories that we'd make up.
Yeah, Rifts. What a great! I love the fact that Rifts is just like every world you ever want.
I know, and I played it I used to say I played it recently, but technically it wasn't recently. It was like 10 years ago I played it.
Craig, it feels like Rifts is like the greatest showman of games. There
keeps popping up.
It's every game you'd ever want. It's every game.
Anyway. Wow! Well,
see what I did there? So
it is, and it also it's amazing because that game I don't think it has rules. Like I read it and reread it recently, and I cannot figure out the core mechanics of that game other than that there is mega damage.
Yeah.
It does have rules, but
I've only ever played as a player because I can't figure out the game.
Yeah. The rules are very they're there. But you're right. I mean, they're almost like I don't know that anybody plays them correctly.
No, I think the rules were just that like there are difficulties to things and you roll a die.
Right. Actually, it's kind of what we were talking about in the Lost Chapter. It's almost like the art and the imagery of that game just inspire what you want to do.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And the source books were so fun.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was really the source books. I remember thinking that. Looking at the source, it was just like, oh, this is such a cool thing. And it was like one of the earlier RPGs where you could be in any world, right? Like that was really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and whether it came up or not, just the possibility was so great.
Yeah, so RPGs are really your gateway drug into the gaming world.
Yeah, I suppose so, because that was what my brother was into.
Yeah.
But then, like, when I'd go to the game store and, like, wait for him while he was in an RPG session, I'd be wandering around. And I have a very specific memory of, like, walking to the part of the game store that had miniatures in it. And I had, like, never seen them before. And I saw like these tanks with like little banners and tiny space orcs and just like, my brain just like totally exploded. I've been totally profoundly changed since that moment. So like, miniature wargaming is very, very much me. Like my brother wasn't into it at all. He's a role player.
So that was how you were able to take the fantasy that your mom brought in and then the gaming that your brother you inspired your brother and you're saying I can get into this too, but this is my take on it.
And my love of toys. Like I really love toys too.
Who doesn't?
So, it's funny, like I wanted to be a toy maker when I was really young, and it only occurred to me recently that I am.
Oh, you are. It's right. You are. It's awesome. See, these little desires never go away from you. I think I shared this with Craig once, but when I was very young, I used to always watch Mr. Rogers, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And the coolest thing about Mr. Rogers, I thought, was make-believe, right? Because he'd sit there and this trolley would come behind him and the trolley would go through the wall and all of a sudden you were in this whole world. But then my favorite part was he had this cabinet in the back of his apartment or wherever Mr. Rogers lives. And he'd open his cabinet up and it would be full of all the buildings, right? All the buildings from make-believe. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a cabinet that was full of all these little buildings?
Yeah.
Years and years later, Craig and my brother and I, Craig helped us very much. And my brother ran this giant gaming store based on the website Daka. And in the back of the room, there were these cabinets and he'd open them up. And and one day I opened them up to take out some buildings. And all the train was in there, all the buildings, Space Marine buildings, Imperial Guard buildings. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I am Mr. Rogers now.
Yeah, you are Mr. An apocalyptic.
Right? And you were Mr.
It was like, I'm Mr. Rogers in the 41st millennium, which
Yeah,
is
you're like, wow. In the world of make believe, there is only war.
exactly right. And meow meow kitty, right?
Yeah.
I often call Russ Dak a mouse, but Mr. Rogers works just. Mr. Rogers in the 41st millennium works just
right.
Yeah, I like it.
Speedy delivery. So Sean, you so it was really so you got into so when did you first start collecting your first army? How old were you when you started collecting them up?
I was like 13 because it's more expensive than other things that you're into when you're a little kid, and so and since no one else was like really into it, I didn't have like I had to just like get everything on my own, and so the first set I got was the Warhammer. I forget which edition it is. It was the box set that had Orcs and Empire.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. That was the first set I ever got. And
cool.
My goodness, that was so awesome.
So how did you go from miniature gamer and consumer of awesome miniature games to waking up one day and being like, I want to make my own?
I think that the idea of working in an entertainment industry was a big part of it. I wanted to draw comics, and so for a long time I was like, well, that's the career I want to do. I want to be an illustrator. I want to be a storyteller. And when I took a step back later and like looked at my own personal life and my collection and my passions, like, yeah, I've got a shelf of graphic novels over there. I take that back. I've got 3 or 4 shelves of graphic novels, but like, it's almost all Hellboy and BPRD. And then I've got, cases and cases and cases of miniatures and like display cases of armies and cases of armies that have been retired to the closet. And so it occurred to me that if the things I love are 10% comics and 90% miniatures, like might as well work in miniatures. And so, just sort of the idea that it was possible percolated. And then I looked on Kickstarter and saw that there were miniatures on Kickstarter, and that just knowing that other people had done it. And like, you guys know Tom Mason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reading about how MegaCon Games was just a couple of dudes was super inspiring to me. And so I was like, I could do it. I just need a couple more dudes to work with me. And then I took a hard look at my own work, realized it wasn't good enough. I went back to school. I got my degree in fine art, and then realized
that's commitment right there.
Yeah. Realized then that my hiring a sculptor would be expensive, so I taught myself how to sculpt.
Of course,
awesome. It was just a matter of one step at a time, just doing everything it took.
Doing it all. Now, how are you paying for food during all this? Were you just working odd jobs? Were you in the industry? What were you doing?
Oh, paying for food while
yeah. Like how were you paying rent while you were doing all this?
I worked for United Airlines for a while.
Did you really? Me too.
Yeah. so that worked out. And then, as a student, and then there were some like grim salad days for a while there.
Well, I think it's important that people know, because I mean, a lot of us, when people try to go after their dreams, it's you don't just wake up one day and have it, right? It takes a lot of hard work.
It feels like you woke up one day and it happened because you went from being starving to
right. Right. All of a sudden you're not starving anymore, but there's many years of starving. Right.
But I mean, I think another part of that is, for a while I was taking like any odd job I could possibly get and like feeling really desperate about it. But then with Relicblade in 2015, I started doing it full time. And that was what really mattered, was a project that you really care about, whether if you, because I know a lot of us that are into fantasy stuff and sci-fi stuff. A lot of us have an idea for a book we'd like to write, or a game we'd like to create, or a comic we'd like to work on. And you spend a lot of time when you're in with other creators talking about the thing that you wish you had made or wish you were making or the thing you're working on, right? And it could be like 5 years, 10 years could go by and it's still not made. Yeah. And like the truth is, this stuff happens 40 hours a week is barely enough to make this stuff happen. Right. And so you've got to be doing it full time. Like it's not a nights and weekends thing. Like if you do a breakdown of a comic book, for example, because I was in comics for a while, average comic, just one issue that, people read and throw away is going to be 23 pages. If you do 1 page a week in 23 weeks and you miss a couple weeks, like
that's half a year, right? Right.
Half a year to make a 3-minute entertainment thing. Like it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you won't have had the energy to follow through. But if you're doing a page a day, then that's a new proposition, right? And so switching and doing it full time really made a big difference for me. Like just really, this is what I'm doing, and really treating it like a job and being in.
So how did you get there? How did you decide to tackle Relicblade? What inspired it, and how did you decide to make it a job? How did you get there?
I guess I didn't initially expect to make it. I was teaching myself sculpting with like the vague idea that maybe I would be able to work for another company sculpting or take on some more extra freelance work if I have that skill set. But then once it occurred to me that it was possible, and I knew that it's something that I'd always wanted to do, that then I just went for it. And hitting up Kickstarter and being like, I made this thing and I'm passionate about it. Do you guys care about it? And finding people that were like, yeah, I care about that stuff. There are a lot of people in the world, and if you make something perfectly to your taste, there are at least a couple other people out there that have that same taste, have that same.
It doesn't take as many people as folks think to make these things happen, right? I mean, so how did you promote it?
I mean, willing to learn everything you need to learn.
Yeah.
All your.
And what was the vision? I'm really curious with this part, because I want to know, like in your head, what was the elevator pitch to yourself and others to make Relicblade different? Because I think about it, like if I try to describe it, like it sounds like there's already a lot out there, but there's not. Because having played it and look at the imagery, it definitely has its own look and feel that I really like. And as you know, because I bought a bunch of stuff at Adepticon. But how would you, in your head, like what were you thinking as you were building it? Like what were you thinking? It's going to be to my taste.
Yeah.
And what were your tastes telling you that the market didn't have?
Well, all right. So I had just finished a D&D campaign, and if you can have fun waiting a half hour to take your turn in D&D with a character, like what makes that so great? It's like all the choice that you get, the amount of control you have over your character, the way it's so dynamic, right? There's a lot of dynamism to role-playing combat. And something that wargaming often doesn't have, where you just move and shoot and assault, or move and attack. And so I wanted to bring in role-playing level fighting. I wanted to bring in like heroic characters and really dynamic battles. I wanted to have like adventure-driven combat where like just the armies meeting on a field is neat, but it doesn't make me want to play again. And so having some sort of like scenario and adventure combat, like, there were things that weren't things I wanted out of gaming that weren't being met with the games I was playing. Even though, I mean, I adore Frostgrave, and I would play a ton of Frostgrave, but I don't really like wizards.
They're ornery. They're ornery, wizards.
So, and there are other games out there like I loved Mordheim, but that game's old and the game mechanics are not great.
Very cool.
Right.
And like there's 20 years of innovation in tabletop gaming since then. And so I think that there's a lot of great gameplay and fun that you can add to these games, even if it feels like there are other games out there that are similar. It's, I think that's not the reason to be scared, because there were lots of other first person shooters before they made you know, to bring up that secret reference from.
Well, I loved it when you were talking about what got you into miniature gaming. I think you hit upon the essence of what gets a lot of people into miniature gaming and new miniature games too. I mean, I'm a rules guy and I talk about it all the time, but in the end, for a miniature game, it's all about the models.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see a model, it has to inspire you to want to enter that world, right? And when that happens, they've got you, right? So when you were thinking about that, so you just said that part of your inspiration was a lot mechanically. You wanted a fantasy game, you wanted stories, RPG combat. What about the inspiration on the look and feel? How did you feel like when someone was going to look at your art and your models, what was going to make you feel like this is something new? It's not Lord of the Rings. It's not Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It's not War Machine. It's not Mordheim. It's something different.
Yeah, I think I just trusted my own taste on that again.
Mm-hmm.
There was like some kind of mathematical breakdown. I remember some on, maybe it was a podcast I was listening to, but this art director was talking about how you want a new product to be like 80% recognizable and 20% new.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't like latch onto that and hold to it religiously, but it's true. Like when I started with Relicblade, I wanted the characters to be recognizable. Like you want to have a cool foot knight, you want to have like a cool druid and like a cool cleric, and but at the same time, you know, they aren't orcs, they're pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, that's not super different. Like a lot of old D&D stuff, you got the pig face orcs, but you know, it's just the stuff that I drew and liked when I was younger, and I draw them now. And I think that my own art style brings something weird to it because it's comic booky and fun. Like it's lighthearted, but also horror. Like it's just my own weird personality. And so my personal weirdness translate into the game, and like it or not, that's what.
So you're thinking, I'm just weird enough to make this work.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was your, so you're getting ready to do the Kickstarter. You feel like you've got some good mechanics you're excited about. You've taught yourself to sculpt. You've got a good angle on the way it's going to look. You feel like it's pretty cool. What did you decide had to be the minimum for the Kickstarter to get people excited? Like in terms of number of factions or anything?
I actually released the game before the Kickstarter.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, cool.
So the Kickstarter was not my initial plan. Seeing that people used Kickstarter inspired me, that there was interest in the world for that kind of stuff. But like I think basically my research went like this: Kickstarter.com, enter, click. What is this? Oh, Kingdom Death Monster, $1 million. Well, I guess that exists. And then I like close the window and I'm like, all right, I'm inspired enough to that maybe.
Someone made $1 million doing this.
So very in-depth research on my part. Yeah, so I looked at the models I had sculpted. I wrote the rules. I self-published a limited run. And I went to comic book conventions and sold it. And I posted it online, and Beasts of War didn't know that I was just some guy in my apartment somewhere.
Right.
And they reported on it like it was a real game, and people thought it was a real game. It is a real game. And so then a friend of mine was like, well, Sean, I know it already exists, but you can do so much more with the money that you'd earn on Kickstarter. So why don't you put what you already made on Kickstarter? Mm-hmm. Even though people could buy it right now on your website, they'll still back it. And so then I put together the Kickstarter. I'm like, well, these things would make it better, like nice, nice components. I could add a new character. And so the stretch goals really ended up stacking up and turning it into like a really professional looking product.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And then right away afterwards, I tend to like book myself stuff to set deadlines for myself. Mm-hmm. And so Kickstarter's been a really good structure for me where I can get a product ready, bring it to Kickstarter, and then that sets up an imperative deadline for my own workflow, and then I can produce a bunch of stuff and get it out to people. And now I've built, a fan base that they're ready to back it right away. And that takes a lot of stress out of it, where the first Kickstarter, I was having nightmares and in a constant panic. Whereas with my second and third Kickstarters, I post it within an hour or two, it's funded, and everyone's excited because they love Relicblade, and I'm not going crazy trying to be on every promotion opportunity. I don't stress out about it as much. I'm an independent artist creator creating.
I love it.
So it's very fun.
I love it. So is your game in distribution at all with stores, or you do bursts of Kickstarters? I mean, you have it in stock, you go to conventions, but is it pretty much bursts of Kickstarters and orders on the web?
Yeah. I do direct sales on relicblade.com. Cool. I would do distribution, but I think I'd need to have a better system
manufacturing
for my warehousing. Because right now, I'm sitting in my 1-bedroom studio, and I've got just piles and piles and piles of boxes and miniatures around me. And if a distributor wanted to buy 300 copies, that'd be a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of me sitting and sorting little bits of metal to sell to them at 50% off at least.
Right.
And so then I have to wonder if it's worth my time to do that. So I think when Relicblade gets big enough that I need to work with a distributor, which frankly it could be right now, but I don't know if I'm ready to face that reality.
That's right. It sounds like you've got a great it sounds like you found good balance though.
Right.
You're able to have your creativity. Yeah, you're doing what you love. You're making money. You're and you're not killing yourself.
And I don't mind being a boutique game. I don't mind that. I realized, I don't know, 8 months ago, a year ago, that what do I want for Relicblade? I'm happy for it to be a boutique game. I'm happy to have fans that will love it. And I don't need to rat race and try and get my bottom line high and have a big company. Right. I want to I'm an independent artist, right?
It's not unlike this podcast, right, Craig? We're a boutique podcast.
We are a boutique podcast, Russ. I've always thought of ourselves as boutique.
Yeah, it sounds more. It has
more
a certain
than
a little more je ne sais quoi. Anybody can be a mainstream game,
right? Yeah, no, you guys are providing a specialty.
A very narrow focus,
right?
Audience.
We don't need to be mass market. Who wants to be on 80,000 radio stations across the land? We don't need that.
Well, I totally understand the whole point of it being less stressful.
Yeah. I like that part a lot.
And so one thing I do is when I get orders, I do a little sketch. I put it in the bag.
Oh,
cool. If you're buying something that's hand packed by the artist, whatever, I'll make that part of the value.
That's awesome.
If I'm going to already be the one putting the book in, it only takes me a second longer to sign it and do a little drawing of a knight and put it in your package. So that sort of stuff is where I really focus on. I want my fans to really have a personal experience with the fun.
That's awesome. Well, it means your heart's in the game, and you put a little piece of yourself in every copy. That's awesome. That's really cool.
For sure.
That's really, really cool. So how do you, let me ask you this, Sean, and maybe because it's more of an RPG feel, this is not a big deal, but how do you handle being sort of a one-person shop? How do you handle play testing and balancing of the different crazy ideas you get each morning when you wake up and decide to make a new guy?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you do all that?
So the game mechanics are somewhat self-balancing, but there are powers that, are really, really strong and need to be toned back and there's tons of considerations that need to happen because the characters have lots of different upgrades that they can take. And so you've got to remember, this weapon you need to remember that this weapon could be upgraded in this way. So make sure that you keep that in mind. And so there's a lot to keep track of for sure. But, I do it by playing games and introducing new rules to people. And they're like, oh, hold on, that rule, I'm not sure if that'll work because of this. And so the community helps with that. And then also, I haven't messed up too bad with balancing and game design yet, but
Oh, cool.
it's possible. Like I might ruin.
No, it seems like you aren't. I mean, I was just reading through, and it looks like you're right. It's kind of self-balancing the way some of you pay for some of the actions you want to do. So I feel like it's kind of built in.
Yeah.
And that's what really impresses me a lot. And so I just thought it was interesting. I was really curious how you kind of did it, because if a lot of it's based on intuition, man, that's super impressive because it looks pretty. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts going on in there.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of moving parts, and I don't do like. I was explaining it to someone earlier today. Like the characters have points values, but they're really like tiers of characters. So I just aim for that character to be within a tier.
Uh-huh.
And so there are some characters. Yeah, if you're going to min max, there are some characters that are better than others for the same points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. But Relicblade's a fantasy adventure, like fun fantasy world. And so the competitive scene isn't really like a major part of it. So that matters also.
So I also think you have kind of an interesting spin on factions. Can you kind of describe how that works in Relicblade and how you kind of came up with it and how you think about adding new sort of, I guess, genres into the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So in Relicblade, you can just play a pickup game, and it's great for that. And I play a lot of pickup games where you just set a 100-point limit and play a game. But the campaign rules are set within the setting of Relicblade. And I realize that we haven't talked much about it, but it's sort of post-apocalyptic fantasy where at the height of these magical empires, everything was destroyed, and this is several hundred years after. And so there are a few survivors. Well, not survivors, but there's some civilization, but it's just barely holding on. And then otherwise it's a world of monsters and chaos. And it's a dark age for sure. But it's still like lighthearted and fun. But in
it's a lighthearted post-apocalyptic world, Craig.
Yeah,
that's the best kind.
Right, exactly.
And so as a player, you choose your alignment, whether it's good or evil, and then you can attract characters from those two main alignments to you. So to your encampment and to your goals. But then there are sub-factions within those. So there's the Bone and Darkness, for example, is the skull-faced dark wanderers, and they create like bone minions, and they're very evil. And within their faction, they have their own goals and things that they're trying to achieve within the world of Relicblade. But what matters gameplay-wise is your alignment as a seeker, as like an extraplanar being meddling in their fate. So you can attract any evil character with any other evil character for your squad building. So factions are really a fun way for me to explore new themes and play styles. But as far as actual like gameplay, it's very open, and so players are able to use whatever they like within the evil or within the good factions. And I mean, I kind of see it a lot like a D&D party where, like, yeah, there's a big story and a weird events that led to these disparate characters joining together in this bid for hope or for domination, right? But it doesn't make it impossible for the elf and the dwarf and the human to all be friends in Lord of the Rings, right? So even though the dwarf faction wouldn't normally be friends with the elf faction in Lord of the Rings, Gimli and Legolas become best friends. And so I see Relicblade being kind of like that, where fate puts them together, and you're the character, you're the mechanism of fate in the world.
Cool.
So what is your favorite? I love that. And I love how, I also kind of like how you imply that the player themselves are part of the world as the extra plane you're building. I think that's a really clever, I like that idea.
It's almost like you're lording over these tiny people.
Right.
Like you're a god.
Right. Exactly. It's really cool.
You nudge them this way. You nudge them that way.
You paint them certain colors.
Dance for me, puppet. So what is your, what's your favorite mechanic? Like as you were working through the game and you were designing it and you were play testing it and you were figuring out what was working and what wasn't working, what was your absolute favorite sort of like, yeah, really that part of the game is really my favorite little bit? I
really love the way the actions work. Mm-hmm. it's a game state thing where you don't really fully appreciate it until you're in a game, but like you have so much choice in how you activate a character, especially when there's a scenario in play. Characters get a certain number of dice they can use, and then those dice can be used to perform actions, and some actions only take one die, and then there's a difficulty, and so you roll the die and see if you're successful or not. But you can also add extra dice to the attempt using a focus action. But it basically makes it so that you have so many possible ways to activate your character, and you're sitting there going, well, I've got to make it over here to activate this objective, but I also need to fight this guy. Like a game I played very recently, I had to try and escape. So do I disengage the pig, or do I fight the pig and then move over to turn off that objective? And you end up having so many different options that it really engages your gamer brain. Like the brain where you're sitting there staring at the board and really thinking about all your options. And that's the thing I'm most proud of, is that I made a game that is easy to learn and that's essentially casual pickup. It takes a half hour to play a game, and so it's not super intense. Like it's not like War Machine where it can be stressful to play a game. But you still get the moments that are the best in War Machine, where you're sitting there looking at the game state and just watching all the moving parts and figuring out, oh yes, this is it. I can do it if I do this, and then focus on this action. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of, for sure.
Yeah, you want those cascading feelings. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So I didn't ask you, Sean, how many different factions are in the game now? Or
there are 6 factions right now. There are the War Pigs, the Bone and Darkness, and the Wretched Hive are the 3 evil factions, and that's like lizardmen, skeletons, and pigs, pigmen. And then the good guys, there's the Temple of Justice, which that faction set isn't released yet, but it's the characters that are in the box set. So I don't know if you got the box set. The Knight, Cleric, and Thief are in Justice. And then there's the Wilderkin, their Fey ancestry, so there's elves. And there's a stone elf, like giant stone elf in that one, and a gnome. Awesome. And then there's the Lone Guard, and they're sort of like the Night Watcher, like Rangers.
Yeah, there's my boys right there.
Yeah. So those are the 6 factions right now. And the one thing that's so fun is being able to just make new faction sets. And so generally with each Kickstarter, I introduce a good guy and a bad guy faction set, and then a couple of standalone characters to go with the other factions.
I love it. I have all the gnomes because gnomes are awesome, Greg.
Yeah.
You're in a gnome phase.
I am in a gnome phase.
Like artists go through different color phases.
Yeah. The blue phase.
My gnome phase.
You're in my gnome phase, right?
It's my short, big-nosed phase right now. I'm enjoying it. So what's next for Relicblade, Sean? What's the next big thing? Let me ask you this: how frequently do you do the Kickstarters now? Because it seems like it's kind of the big moments that you
probably annually.
Okay.
I think that's fair to say. My first 2 Kickstarters were both within the same year, but most of the work had been done, and so I think my yearly cycle is definitely to do research and development and pre-production in the summer, a Kickstarter in the fall, and then production in the winter, and deliver in spring, and then summer.
And then the seasons turn again.
Oh, exactly.
I love it.
And so that's how it goes. So I think you should be able to expect new Relicblade Kickstarter in the fall at some point. But I have this funny thing going on where I had that sweet 2-player box set, and now it's out of print.
Oh.
And so I could reprint it technically, but I think that it doesn't necessarily. I want to give people the best possible game experience. And so I think with a few small products that I can release soon and the faction sets, I can give people the very best Relicblade experience, and they'll be able to choose whatever faction suits them. So for example, like if you're loving on the gnomes and there are no gnomes in the 2-player set, like I don't want you to have to spend $100 on a 2-player set and then go and get your gnomes. I want you to just get your gnomes and be ready to play with your friends. So I think I'm gearing more toward having the faction sets be my main way for people to get into it. But that also means I have a few small products I need to support.
Yeah, you like the starter bits to go along with your faction.
Yeah, basic upgrades, so like health potions, magic weapons, and relics. But other than that, I'll be good to go.
Yeah, because you equip your characters, right? There's basically like a little deck of cards.
And in campaign, that's how they advance. So character advancement happens through learning new skills and learning new spells.
Yeah, and I love the campaign system. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm very pleased with how it worked. I hate to say that I love it so much, but I love it so much.
That's your job, man.
Yeah, you can love it. It's okay. It's your baby.
And it's also, I mean, I have to admit that it's exactly to my taste, but yeah, it's very cool. I'm very happy with how it came out.
How did you land on that? So what was the core part of the campaign you wanted to capture? Like what meant the most to you?
Yeah, so I really like, man, I don't know. It was hard because from the start I wanted there to be a campaign style play, but I didn't know how I wanted to do it, and so it wasn't until like later that I wrote the campaign rules after the core game was already out, and so I had a lot of time with the game to understand the mechanics and figure out what I wanted before I jumped into building the campaign. But yeah, I wanted it to be. I didn't want too much bookkeeping, but I wanted there to be a lot of fun gamer stuff, base building and characters could die or learning new skills and forging magic weapons and fighting dangerous monsters and rare stuff that can happen that makes a mission like super dangerous to have like a horrible monster on the board. Stuff like that is just so fun for me. I mean, I love chaos and miniature gaming. So.
Yeah, I love the environment section. I love the mission variety. There's so many cool things. And what I really like is there's so much packed into your rule book. There's so much going on there, but it's not overwhelming in any way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a good balance. And I'm going to be working on a new, well, it's already mostly written, but there's still a lot of work that needs to happen for a new campaign supplement. So that'll be a new setting and new missions, and
cool.
And that'll give me a little more room to be a little more artistic.
I'm gonna have to back this Kickstarter, Craig. That's what's happening right now. I can see this already.
Well, I've got to say, I brought a bunch of gaming stuff with me down to Florida for vacation, and the only thing I cracked open because I didn't have as much free time as I thought was the Relicblade rulebook. I read the whole thing. I loved it, and I can't wait to play it.
Yeah.
As Russ says, there's a lot in there, but I think the most interesting thing to me, Sean, is that you're so talented on so many of these different things. And yet one thing that you would, as an outsider, almost take for granted is, well, I mean, the rule book will probably be a little, a little rough around the edges in layout or whatever. And it's not. It's really clear the way the rules are set up and the way you're learning the rules as you read through the book, and then all of a sudden you're done. I mean, it's, as you said, it's a very simple, clean rule set. I love all of the example drawings because they're all in your very unique style.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I love being able to make those.
There's a little humor in like every little picture and the little details that you can look through. And it was just a really engaging read. And at the same time, all of the mechanics of the game are very accessible. I thought it was an excellently laid out rule book.
And I have to ask you this, Sean, because the callback I got reading your books and then hearing your origin story that you got a lot of, your older brother who played D&D really. So it's one of the things that your comical callbacks, it reminds me of the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. I don't know if you're but there were these little comical drawings in the corners.
That decorative art.
It's just like that. It's more modern. It's updated.
Really, really one of my favorite things for sure.
You caught it, and I love it because it's not done as often as you might think in gaming today. And you captured it, yet you somehow updated it. And what's also great is you go from those little jokes or little things, like as Craig pointed out, like the little examples are all drawings. They look like little scribbles in the corner. But then the next thing you have a really powerful scene of someone, trying to resurrect a body. It's just really, it's just a wonderful book. It's a wonderful read. And again, my compliments to you on this whole thing, because Craig and I are both we're really impressed. As gamers in general, we see a lot of games. It's just a really wonderful little game, but then to realize one guy basically did all this stuff, it's just really mind blowing. Like I can't even comprehend it, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that I get the benefit of when I need an illustration. Like I'm like, oh, I'm laying out this rule book. It would be really great to have a little bit more space here, or like it'd be cool to have a little drawing here.
Yeah,
right.
I don't have to worry about, well, the art budget doesn't cover that. You know,
Right.
I just go, hey, it's worth it to me to do it, and that's that. And so I sit down and I do the drawing. I don't have to worry about like spending an extra $70 just so this corner of the rule book has something filling up the dead space, you know?
Well, that reminds me when Craig and I a long time ago, when we first interviewed Matt Wilson, you know, the guy behind War Machine at Privateer Press, when we first spoke to him, that was one of the things he said, because he's an artist, right? So he was able to do all this great artwork, and he's like, that's where most of the budget goes in producing any game. And so if your artist is essentially free because you're living it, that's a big help. So clearly you're benefiting from that as well.
Yeah, I have an artist and a sculptor and a game designer all on staff, and a graphic designer, and they all just work on a really terrible salary. They all share it. So
it's just like, it's great. Well, Sean, thank you so much for giving us the background, the detail on yourself, as well as the story on Relicblade. As Craig mentioned, we both have our copies. We can't wait to really, unfortunately, we haven't really dove in yet as much as we'd like to, but in the near future, we're going to be playing more, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it on the show.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm really glad you guys got to check it out, and I'm excited that we got to connect.
Well, thanks.
We met at Adepticon, and then we met at Adepticon again.
Yes, we did. It was the first Adepticon.
And then, just hang out a bunch at Adepticon.
That's it. Adepticon is such a great convention. It really is.
I love that show.
It is.
So Sean, we're going to take a quick break, and we come back. We'll chat with you more right after some Total Fangirl.
Okay. Wonderful.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter and check out everything I'm up to over at NicoleWakeland.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. The week before last week, I got to do something kind of amazing, and I think Russ has talked about it elsewhere on the show. I was invited by Nissan to see the world premiere of Solo: A Star Wars Story. It was amazing. I've never been to a big, huge Hollywood red carpet shindig, and it was pretty cool. Not only did they have us do a tour of Lucasfilm, which is just an incredible thing, because as you turn to the left in the hallway to look at all the movie props and posters, you realize you've missed something to the right, and then when you turn back, there's so much to see there. Every square inch of this place is packed with amazing memorabilia from films, props and posters and costumes and stuff from Star Wars and just about every movie you could think of, because they've done so many more films than you realize. You see the posters lined up on the walls and you realize just how much Lucasfilm has produced, and it's incredible. But after they did that in San Francisco, they took us on a jet down to Los Angeles, and we got to go to the premiere, and they really weren't messing around. We had some fun with this. It was a small crew of us. I had to get gussied up in a fancy dress. They sent people to do our hair and to do our makeup, and even sent champagne and strawberries to the room so that I would feel like a movie star as they did my hair and makeup and everything. And then we got to walk the red carpet, and it wasn't just, oh yeah, the stars are there, we're walking into the theater. Oh no, like I'm standing there and I hear people screaming, George, 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 and I look and it's George Lucas, and like I could reach out my arm and I could touch him. And I think I deserve some credit for not reaching out and being like, bing, I touched George Lucas. I did, however, take his picture as he walked onto the fancy schmancy red carpet with denims, with jeans on and a flannel shirt and a blazer, because I kind of feel like if you're George Lucas, you can wear whatever the heck you want to wear to the premiere of movies that you are in many ways responsible for. And Ron Howard was there, and the entire cast of the movie was there. And what was kind of neat is when you walk the red carpet, there's sections where it is just the stars to get their fancy pictures. They sort of step out ahead, but we're all walking right there too, just sort of right behind it. And there were 3 different movie theaters showing the film at the red carpet premiere in LA because it was such a big deal. And you had a badge and it told you which theater you were in, and we were in the Dolby Theater, and we kind of assumed like, okay, well, we're probably just in one of the random theaters, whatever. Well, when you take your seat at the theater, they were playing the live stream that they were showing to the public. That was showing on the movie screen before the movie started. And things were running a little bit late, and you can see they're running late because the entire cast is standing outside of the giant Millennium Falcon that they have built for the occasion on the street that you kind of walk under as you enter the red carpet area. They're all getting their official pictures taken. So we're chatting, blah, blah, blah. We see that the screen goes dark. The cast is walking into whichever theater they're in. And we're like, okay, this should start soon. And we're waiting and we're waiting. We're like, come on, what is the holdup? Like, obviously the red carpet part is done. What's the movie? And then all of a sudden in the front of the theater, the entire cast walks into the theater that we are about to watch the movie in. All the actresses walk in. It was amazing. And they're there. So we're watching Solo with the actors and actresses who played the parts, which was just incredible to think they're right there. Even John Williams was there. It was a stunning thing, even if you weren't a Star Wars fan, to experience. So the movie, it opens shortly. Everyone's going to see it. I'm not going to spoil anything. It opens in just a couple of days from when I am recording this. I'm not sure how quickly Russ is going to get the show up, so I don't want to spoil anything anyway for anybody who sees it late, but I loved it. I'm a huge Han Solo fan, so it was pretty cool to get to see a young Solo and to get to see what he was like and to learn bits about the things that we kind of knew already, and to see some of that, and the things we had no idea about, to see some of that. And there are a few just moments where you do that, oh my gosh. So there's plenty of that. So if you haven't seen Solo, definitely, if you're a Star Wars fan, go see it. It truly is one of my favorite movies. It was very fun. It was more Rogue One than it was, the other Star Wars films, a little bit rough and dirty, like Han Solo. So hopefully you have as much fun when you go to see it as I did when I went to see it at the world premiere.
Now it's time to talk about our friends at BattleFoam.com. Hey, I'm just checking out BattleFoam. My favorite thing, it's hard to have a favorite thing with BattleFoam. They've been a sponsor for the show for so long, and what's wonderful about having BattleFoam as a sponsor is since the very, very beginning, they've made great products, and to this day, they make great products. And what I love about them is not only can you customize, but also they're way ahead of the curve on branded trays from your favorite games. And right on their front page now, they're showing off their new Guild Ball team trays with trays customized to fit all the models in particular Guild Ball teams. And then they have the little toppers, those little thin pieces you put in there to keep your model safe, with those all laser cut with the cool logos of the hunters and the farmers and the blacksmiths. And you just pick your favorite team, your favorite tray, and away you go. It is so cool. Again, the customization's there. Maybe you're not a Steam, Guild Ball player. Maybe you're a Privateer Press fan. No problem. They got the brand new Privateer Press backpack for your War Machine and Hordes needs. It looks fantastic. No easier way to carry all your models around. Maybe you're a hardcore painter. Maybe you don't like the idea of even foam touching the paint on your model because you don't put a sealant on it because you're a competitive painter, or maybe you just want beautiful armies and you don't want anything touching them. No problem. They got those Magna racks, right? Your models, your little metal in your model, they stick directly to the Magna racks. The racks fit in all the existing battle foam cases, so you can make sure that your models are in there. They're safe. They're only touching air. They look fantastic, and those same racks can then be display racks in your home or at the store where you're going. So just so many great options, so many great opportunities. Cases for every price point, whether you want an affordable case just to carry your stuff around, a nicely cardboard box that fits the foam easily, or you want a hard-sided case that a truck could drive over and your models be totally safe. You can check on an aircraft. No problem. They've got it all. Check it all out over at BattleFoam.com.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at DicetowerNetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what? Who writes these?
Welcome back. And so now we are, as we teased at the beginning of the show, going to talk about our initial thoughts concerning Dropfleet Commander, now by TT Combat, previously by Hawk Wargames. I think it's still technically by Hawk Wargames and just published by TT Combat. It's a little confusing. But anyway, so we thought we got all hooked with a single demo, right, at Adepticon, Russ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And it's been a little while since we got hooked into a miniatures game, and it's been a long while since we got hooked into a fleet game.
Yes.
So we kind of wanted to give this the full treatment and talk about it over the course of 2 episodes. So this time around, we're going to talk about what kind of hooked us at the beginning, and then the book and the models, and then the fluff. We're going to break down the fluff, basically. And then next time, we'll talk about the gameplay and go into some detail about some experiences we've had in the game and what we like about it and how it plays and whatnot.
Yeah, so today is presentation and aesthetics.
Ooh, look at Russ.
That's the most important part other than the other stuff.
Well, I think actually, exactly. Except for the other parts, this part is the most important. Well, I think, but when you think about it, though, and you know, as a game designer, Sean, I'd love to hear your angle on this. I think miniature gamers in particular, right? We are all about the aesthetics, because otherwise, why play with miniatures? Why not just play with tokens?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of us played terrible games for a long time just because they were miniature games.
Right. So I mean, you know, when you're thinking about your game, right? I mean, how important was getting the aesthetics right for your stuff?
Yeah, it was super important. I mean, you know, like that's the first thing people see, right? And
right.
And I'm a big proponent of visual communication, obviously. And so, like, the most I can communicate right away is going to be through images, and especially if you're collecting and painting sculptures, it's super important that people are interested in it.
So Craig, so from an aesthetics point of view, not the rules, because we're doing the rules next time, but from aesthetics and presentation point of view, what hooked you when you first saw Dropfleet and you saw the table set up and you saw the you know, the models and the boxes and the book line in there? What grabbed you?
Well, the first thing you're going to notice is you're not playing on a star field, right? You're playing on a high level orbital map, and you're seeing the surface of a planet far down below you. And so right there, the whole aesthetic is now changed, because everything's sort of like given a scale, and you're like, oh wow, these really are big ships. And in many of these games, you can see a lot of the missions need satellites. So there's cool satellites, and Hawk War Games / TT Combat have this amazing kit where you can make it's a very freewheeling kind of satellite kit where you can make all kinds of different cool looking satellites. And so you've got all of these different elements that totally change the way it looks on the board. And then you add to that the aesthetic of the 4 different factions, and they look wildly different. Not a single one of these ships could possibly be confused with one of the other 3 factions. And that's very cool, because you've got sort of like the hard science, clunky military sci-fi faction. You've got sort of the...
You mean the coolest faction?
What's that?
You mean the coolest faction? The
coolest. It is a very cool faction. It's very sort of like... I don't know, what would you call it? Like it's not diesel punk or anything like that, but it's like that kind of Battleship Yamato kind of going with big giant guns that are just almost on the wrong side of crazy long, and that kind of stuff. And then you've got the super
turrets,
lots of turrets. Yep, you've got the super sleek. Sort of like sleek anime version that's they look completely different. And then you've got the buggy biological looking ships, and then you've got these weird wacky almost like natural extrusions, almost like rock formation ships, and each one of them looks completely different. And then there's the dials that look cool, and there's very few tokens on the board, but on the map you're actually looking at cities. And right off the bat, when you're just walking by, you're like, well, they're in orbit and there are cities, and they're actually fighting over those cities. And I think that is a really cool facet of this kind of space fleet game that I've never seen before. And I think it's a really cool element that is unique and poses almost frames the entire game in a whole new light. And that's what really has drawn me in. And unfortunately, over the last year and a half, I've tried to get demos at various conventions, and either the booth was being run oddly and people were like, well, sorry, we're not doing demos right now, that kind of thing, or it was so crowded that I couldn't get to the table. But finally, we got a demo at Adepticon. It was a great demo, and my reaction was exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I was hooked.
That's awesome. I went to Las Vegas Open in January, and it was Hawk War Games had a booth, but it was right after Hawk sold the game or the switch over TT Combat, and so they weren't there. But I'm on record saying that my intention was to go and leave with a whole bunch of spaceships, and I left.
You were going to do it, right?
I'm so sad. So I had that same experience where I was like, this game I will buy as soon as I can. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing that drew me in immediately, because the first thing I do when I see a game like this, and I see the models on the table, and Craig just did a great job describing the feel of what you're looking at, and I was the same thing grabbed me, wow, we're in orbit, and that just immediately gives you objectives to strive for. It immediately gives you very great visuals, and then the next thing I do is I grab the rule book. And this is where I think they did a great job, because the rule book is extremely compelling at drawing you into the universe. Yeah. They had an interesting choice. They went with the horizontal long rule book, kind of a la Battlefleet Gothic era.
Battlefleet Gothic,
right? So it's sideways. The bummer about that is it's a great looking aesthetic, and it gives you a great page layout. It just doesn't fit on your bookshelf well. But yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, it comes with a sleeve, which is really cool, which I promptly threw away. But the sleeve is cool.
Sadly, the sleeve is what makes it fit on your bookshelf, Russ.
Yes, but it also doesn't. It's not very resilient, and I figured it would fall apart.
Okay.
But did you keep your sleeve?
I did.
Oh, does it go in and out okay?
I haven't used my sleeve, but if I ever need to put it back on a shelf, I'll have the sleeve.
Okay.
If you ever stop reading it, it's that good.
But
here's what I loved about it. This is the part that hooked me, Craig. So I'm flipping through the book, and they've done a great job. The artwork, there is great artwork, but there's also a lot of great, pictures of the ships photoshopped up with explosions and lasers. But then when I got to the section where they're describing all the different weapon systems, and for each weapon system, they had a picture, like a zoomed in macro picture of the model where the weapons are, right? Nicely painted. So it's talking about the guns, and it's showing the turrets, and it's talking about the shield, and it's showing the shield generators on the model. And then it's for each faction. It does that. It just was such a brilliant way to capture the visuals with the rules and bring the two together in a way that I had never really seen done before. Usually there's a drawing or maybe two. There's not usually a drawing of every single ship system, and then there's never an actual photo of the system on the model zoomed in so you can actually see where it is. And it's particularly cool on the ones that are really abstract alien races, all these crazy shapes, and you can still see on the model all these parts. And so clearly the sculptors and the mechanics guys are really tight on this and making everything come to life. And it just really drew me into the world.
What a beautifully conceived notion to really make sure that the weapons are appropriate and model them appropriately. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how true this is of Dropfleet, but I know that Drop Zone Commander kind of had a little bit of the whole Metal King Studio thing, Sean, going on, where there was one guy who kind of went off on his own and did it all, I think, at the beginning. So that might be carrying over into this, although I know he's got a lot more help now with Dropfleet. But I do think that there's been kind of that level of contact carried through the game systems, which I think is cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. So, Craig, what about the book to you? What really brought you into the book?
The book, right off the bat, the cover of the book has a almost like a schematic of one of the ships of the UCM, the United Colonies of Mankind, the filthy people that Russ has chosen.
The awesomest faction.
Yep. And it's awesome because it's a schematic. It looks like a schematic. It's kind of like a line drawing or a blueprint, but it shows you where all the drop ships would be on the inside. And it kind of just looks sort of like a cool picture at the beginning, and it carries over. So the aft part of it is on the front cover, and the bow is on the back cover. But then when you start looking, you're like, oh my God, those are the drop ship. Those are the ones that carry the armor. Those are the ones that carry the guys. And it kind of it's a very cool aesthetic that then just gets carried over into the book, where the rules are very nice and neat and clean, and then there's lots of blockouts with examples and little advanced rules in them, like a note on point defense and close action weapon systems and things like that. And it doesn't do that Games Workshop-y thing where the fluff and the rules are kind of all mished together. It's very clear about all the rules and when the turning happens and how do you find out the range of the weapons and things like that. But it kind of combines really cool, very clear and distinct illustrations showing the rules with really cool in-game effect pictures, like photos of the ships in action. And then on top of that, as Russ said, there's lots of artwork that brings the whole thing to life. And and so what caught me was just I always flip through the rules and I just kind of look like, oh yeah, that's a lot of rules. Okay. And then I want to go and look at the factions. And this is one of those old school books that has all the rules for all the models currently available. So it's not one of those where now I have to either get the cards or go online or do something else. So if I'm curious about what Russ has, I can just look at the UCM section. If I'm curious what I want to build next, I can do the Scourge section or
Harpies.
The Harpies. The PHR.
Space Harpies.
Exactly. Space Harpies. They're the worst. And so, or if you ever want the Shaltari tribes, you can go look at that. And so I love that. And I think the best thing for me is I love the color tabs that carry through, so that if you look at the pages, everything is color coded. So you're not super like the background is dark blue, and then the rules are a very, very, very different looking light blue, and then the missions are an even lighter blue, and then it's all the fluff, and the fluff's kind of color coded to the individual factions. So it's a really cool laid out book. There are a couple of times where I had when I was doing my cheat sheet, I had some hard time sometimes finding exactly what I was looking for. The table of contents is not at all useful, really. It actually just keys to the different sections that are already color coded. And I don't think there is. Oh, there is a little. There's a little index, which actually I have used a couple times, but it's not as granular as I would like it. So it kind of loses a little bit there. But the page layout is cool, and it's wicked fluffy, and it pulls you right in. And like I said, all the artwork is great. They've pulled in a lot of artwork from Drop Zone Commander, which is the 10mm land game that we actually talked about, I think, a couple years ago. So it gives you a very strong feeling that this is happening in an established universe, which I really like. So yeah, I was a big fan of the book.
Yeah, so the book definitely drew us in, and then the next thing we do is we go look at the models. So we're staring at the models while other people are playing the demo, waiting for our turn. And so, Craig, as you started to look at the models, what drew you in there?
Well, the models are I've always liked spaceship models, of course. Most of us do. And I will say they kind of hit it out of the park with me 3 out of the 4 times, because I couldn't decide amongst the factions. I had a really hard time. I really love the UCM that Russ ended up getting. I really love the PHR, the really sleek looking anime one. And I really like the Scourge, the biological looking kind of insectile ships. And so they're all very,
Wait, hang on. Which one are you not crazy about?
The Shaltari tribes are cool. They're neat. They're definitely
more of a bold design. Like,
they're more unique.
They're much more unique. Although I think that they're probably the ones that benefit the most from a from an actual personal being able to hold them. Because looking at them, they look like they're very 3-dimensional, weird like wings that stick out in different
I think so. For people who are listening, and maybe forgive the comparison, but it's a little bit like StarCraft aesthetics, where like one looks Zerg, one looks Protoss, and one looks human, or Terran. Like, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, that's like that's fair. It feels like
and then the Sheltari are like none of those. But you know, they kind of remind me of Babylon 5 a little bit. I forget what
I was thinking.
Yes, the shadows of Babylon 5 or one of the other races.
Yeah, they're like the shadows, but in bright orange. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, I should say I like them. I just don't like them as like the other three are like, no, do me, no, pick me, no.
Theoretically, you choose one, right? So
yeah. Theoretically,
I think it's the orange, Craig. I think if you saw those painted like black, like they were the shadows, they'd look awesome.
See, now you've done something bad to my brain.
So I'm with you. I think a couple things about the models really jumped out at me. One was they had the glass cases there of the really super large ones. And I like excuses to have super large models. So I didn't buy one of the super large ones. Thankfully, they were out of stock there and it saved my wallet. But I just to know that level of opportunity was there to if you got crazy into the game. But also the level of detail on the smallest frigates was fantastic. And so the detail was there, and I really like this part of the game. I found it intriguing. The bases are very intricate and have these built-in dials and can track 3 different states that we later learned, and we'll talk more about that in the rules. But essentially, a design decision was made, an aesthetics decision was made that they would try to make the game as tokenless as possible. So basically everything you need to know about the current state of a ship, except for critical damage effects, which are kind of not rare, but they're not as big a deal. Except for critical damage effects, the remaining wounds and the height the ship is flying and its signature in space, all of that's tracked on this cool little dial. And I thought that was just really cool because it removes the clutter from the board and keeps that aesthetic of it's really about the models and the terrain. So I really enjoyed that.
Have you used them? Have you used them in a game?
So yeah, and one of the things the guy giving the demo said was in the center of the dial there's a little peg, and the little peg is used to keep track of your current wounds or your the hull points that you think of like hit points. And they weren't using the pegs during the demo because the person giving the demo said it was too fiddly, and so they were using the more classic like little mini D6s or whatever. And I, though, like to use the pegs, and it is a little bit fiddly, but I think with a little practice, it's not that bad. And I really like that I can look on the table. You know what it does? It makes it feel like, when you see a video game or an anime movie and the commanders are all standing around the tactical holo thing, and it shows tactical holo images of the ships, but then there's like little data things like hovering around the ships. It almost feels like there's those little data things hovering around the base of each ship.
Yeah, it's cool to have the tokens be like, or quote unquote, or the replacement token be something that's immersive.
And I can look over and see Craig's status, and it's kind of like my scanners are over there, and I can see this ship is damaged and this ship's not damaged, and that ship's this high. And so it's kind of like it gives you that sort of battlefield tactical simulator feel, which I really, really like. And so I'm almost willing to sacrifice the fiddliness, or I am willing to sacrifice the fiddliness for sort of that aesthetic. I don't know, Craig, how do you feel about the bases?
I love the concept of the bases. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the pegs or not.
Hang with me, man. Come on.
I don't know, man. The pegs, I mean, I'm looking at I'm holding a frigate stand right now, and I love the dual states that it tracks. I love the way they did that. I love the free spinning thing. There is one thing that I've seen online a lot because I watched a lot of YouTube games of this, trying to catch on. Is they're little they look like almost like little beads or donuts you could get at a craft shop, and you use all the same color for the different groups. It's like which comes in even more handy when you've got groups that can kind of go off on their own away from their mother battle groups. And so with that, you would actually be tracking yet another thing with the same stand with staying with the aesthetic, which I think is cool. But those pins are tiny, and I don't think you could make them any bigger. So I'm not faulting the people who came up with these. Like, oh, if you just done this, because I don't think any bigger, and they're gonna dominate the thing, and I think you would run out of room also.
Yeah.
But it's so fiddly to try to get those on there and spin it when you have to spin it.
I mean, like HeroClix has interactive bases, and that was maybe that's one of the first I can think of. But then like Armada has fiddly bases like that, and it's cool though. Like you said, like it. I don't know. I think it's a cool choice, and use it or not, I think it's all for the best.
It's there for you. And
I mean, if I don't use it, what I'll be doing is just a small black die that I'll keep on the base, so it'll fundamentally be doing.
Because there's a space for those like micro D6, also, right? Like,
well, there's not
a specific space, but I think it would fit in the
you could find
where the numbers are.
But there are also third party bases out there that you can replace them with that have little built-in wound dials and things. So there's ways around it. I really like what they're trying.
And I like the fact that they track all of your firing arcs also.
Yes,
which I think is great. Like all of your flanks, your rear, your front, and your narrow front. And so when those are painted up, the base looks really cool and very much like what Russ was saying, where if you're looking at a tactical computer and each ship had sort of like a status ring around it, it looks very much like that.
Yeah, I love it. The only downside about this aesthetic is the assembly of the models. So it's not bad, but there's a lot of options. So when you are building your ships, you have to kind of follow this little step-by-step instruction manual that comes with them because there's different options as you build the ships together. And so you really want to spend a little bit of time researching the fleet you want to build and then carefully thinking about putting them together in the right order. Because there's like the bottom hull's different in certain situations, and then these little aside things are different in certain situations, and you can get through it, but it makes assembly. It's not hard. You just have to be really focused on attention to detail, so you don't screw up your ship.
Yeah, I did that with Dystopian Wars. I put the wrong turrets all over my guys.
And because it's all cool. And because those pictures are in the books, you will notice if you screw it up, because then you go look at the pictures in the book. You go, oh, darn it, I didn't put the right turret on my guy, and it'll bother you. It'll bother me anyway. So I spent a lot of time doing that, but the end result, all the stuff comes together, I think, in a wonderful way that really looks great on the table. Craig, how do you feel about the final result?
I think it looks great. I really enjoy it. I am finding it very challenging to paint because, and this was a criticism I had with the models for Drop Zone Commander also. They really reward excellent freehand painting, or at least the two factions that I have. The details are all on there. You're absolutely right. The details are beautiful, but they don't kind of guide your brush at all. And so you're kind of like, if you want to pick out all those different weapons, you're doing it freehand. Or
you should have chose those chunky humans, or your least favorite, where they got
the UCM, baby. It's all about the dry brush.
Well, that's not true though, because you've got big flat spaces where you can do all kinds of cool paint. Also, and
that's what decals.
Yeah, and the PHR has a lot of like smooth surfaces also, but I think those look best if they're left like a solid color for the most part.
Right.
And so you know what they are great for? They're great for dry brushing and inking, and that picks out all the cool detail. It only becomes really frustrating if you try to get super fancy, but you don't quite have. I don't have that skill level with freehand brushing. And so if I try to get, and I did try to get a little fancy with the Scourge, and it took me a couple test models before I went, oh wait, if I just paint all this one color, it's going to be great. And I ink it, it's going to be.
Because you're doing Scourge, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, because my buddy Malev, he does commission painting, and he got a Scourge commission, and I was like, oh sweet, oh man, that's so fun to be able to paint those Dropfleet models. And he's like, oh man, he repainted the Scourge commission like 3 times because it was so hard for him to like really be happy with it. And like the studio paint jobs are so nice, and then you get out your brush and
yeah. If you look online or in the book, the studio paint jobs are just phenomenal.
They're sick. Yeah, they did a really good job.
And they differentiate the fleets even further. It's a totally different style for each different fleet, and it's not something that I could like. Games Workshop used to do this where all their studio models were just gorgeous, and then lately they've kind of gone to let's keep the studio models sort of tame so people don't get intimidated.
That's something smart, I think, to do.
Yeah, because I will tell you, I am very intimidated by these Dropfleet models. They look gorgeous, and I know I'm not going to be able to do quite what I want to do with them, so I just have to kind of reconcile myself with, you know what, they're going to look awesome at arm's length, and that's when they're going to be, most often viewed. So that's
maybe what you got to do is get your wet palette going, and then just start get a big brush and do some crazy blending because it looks like the Scourge are really purples and greens and weird blending stuff going on more than detail.
Yeah, I thought I was doing something really cool by going with a more insectile brown kind of paint scheme, and now I'm going, I just should have gone with the metallic inking, and that would have been much easier. But that's if you're gonna have a problem with a model, that's the problem you want to have, right? Too much detail that's hard to paint, as opposed to not enough detail and it's all just bleh.
Yeah, but better than blob. Sure.
And to continue that, Russ, talking about what the table looks like, the table looks gorgeous when you've got a really cool orbital map down on there, and you've got, the key is you got to get this at a convention. And Russ and I did not know how this was priced out in the wild. We had never really even tried to purchase it until we got hooked at the demo. And at the demo, somehow they had just converted everything from pounds to dollars using the same numbers. So there was no conversion. So if it cost 20 pounds, it was costing $20. So you were getting a massive minimum 30% discount on most of the stuff you bought. And some of them were just a crazy discount, like these cool city tokens that we were talking about earlier. 3-dimensional resin city tokens, because you need these different sectors all marked out on the map. And the game comes with little cardboard tokens, and they look totally great because you're so high up, it shouldn't really matter. But the tokens look cool. And we paid $20 for the whole set, and the whole set online goes for like $50 or $60. So it's which we can talk about that towards the end, maybe, about how hard it is to get this game right now. We're hoping this game really picks up. That's what
I've got a topic in the back of my head. I'm ready to derail the conversation just as soon as you're ready. We can keep on track.
All right.
So we'll save that. Put a pin in that.
I've got it. I just want you guys to know I'm ready to.
Okay.
So before we run out of time, So the book looks great. The models look great. The tabletop looks great. The final aesthetic that matters to both Craig and I know a lot is, what's the universe like? What's the fluff like? Is it compelling? Mm-hmm. And since Craig's a writer, he really gets into this a lot. So Craig, give us the short version. What's the state of the universe in Dropfleet Commander, and give us the high level. What's each faction's sort of background and fluff?
Okay, well, this ties in with, again, a couple years ago when we talked about Drop Zone Commander. So it's not far future, but it's like 2 or 3 centuries in the future, and mankind's got colonies all over the place, and we've got faster than light travel, and everything's going great, and it's going swell. And then this object falls out of the sky and hits Earth, and it's basically links into the entire computer system of all humanity and absorbs that, and then starts talking and says, okay, look, there's something terrible coming, and you all have to come and join us. We're going to save you all, but you have to come immediately. And a small faction of humans is like, yeah, we're going to do it. And everybody else is like, don't be stupid. That's just like a ball that fell out of the sky. We can't do what it says. And so a small fleet of humans shows up at the coordinates they were told, and there's a big battle because the rest of humanity is like, look, you can't just abandon us. And they succeed in escaping, and they go off on their own. And very soon after that, a massive invasion of these I want to say they're like a combination of a bunch of different alien races that you've seen before in movies and TV and games. And basically they sort of co-opt the biology of whatever they're attacking. And they're little slug-like creatures that go into your heads, and they take you over so they can use the technology of whoever they take over. And they're massively huge in numbers, and their technology is really powerful. And they just start sweeping over all of the human colonies, going right down to Earth. They take over everything, and the surviving humans flee to their farthest, most primitive, most basic colonies, and that's where they're stuck because these invading aliens, the Scourge, eventually stop taking over. They just kind of like expand to the point where they're good for now. We don't know why they're doing what they're doing, but now they've taken over this whole core of the galaxy. And so eventually the humans decide, well, we got to take those planets back. They form the United Colonies of Mankind, and they start working in coordination. They build a fleet, and they're going to start coming back and take over the inner planets once again. And so you have your two main antagonists. You have the Scourge, who have taken over the galaxy, or this part of the galaxy, and then you have the UCM, who are the humans coming back to take over, to take their planets back. In the meantime, you also have the faction of humans that left following this technological artifact come back, and now they're like they've put computers in their brains, and they're cyber enhanced, and they call themselves the Post-Human Republic, and their technology is more advanced, and they're inhuman. They seem very cold and calculating. They use all kinds of cool, weird technology that nobody's ever heard of before, and nobody really knows what their goal is. Sometimes they show up and they help the humans when they're fighting the Scourge. Sometimes they just show up and fight the Scourge. Sometimes they just show up and fight the humans. So nobody really knows exactly what their objective is. And then on top of all of this, there's this ancient race called the Sheltari tribes, and they, you would think, would be like the Eldar, and they're higher than everybody else, and they're inscrutable. They've gone a really interesting way with them. They're actually a warlike race that likes to test themselves against other warlike races, and so when there's no one else around, they'll fight each other. But they basically their value, or their self-worth, is seen as their value as a warrior. And so they're out to fight just about anybody. So they're a very interesting combination of almost like Native American aesthetic, although they look like frogs when you see the actual creatures, coupled with almost like a Viking element, coupled with an orc element, coupled with an Eldar element. So it's all in a very interesting and probably the most unique mashup of all the races. And so that gives you your four factions. Was it?
No, I was going to say Klingon predators.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's got all these cool different tropes all kind of crushed together in a way that I think is a really cool thing that works for me. And so that gives you your four factions. Now, the interesting thing is Drop Zone has been around for a while, right? And they've only had these four factions. And very recently, they introduced a fifth faction. But the fifth faction is basically survivors that are living on these planets that are fighting with these ramshackle, rundown technicals. So civilian trucks with guns on them, or buses and things like that. So they're not going to have a fleet. So I don't know that there's any way to wedge a fifth faction or more factions in here without really breaking open the galaxy in a way that that would kind of affect the overall fluff. But I think they have four strong factions, that's for sure. And I think they're all compelling in their own way. They each have a compelling story, a cool aesthetic, and a different play style and technology level that really kind of separates them from the other three.
Very cool. Great summary, Craig.
Nice.
So Sean, what's your disruptor?
Oh, all right. So one thing that I'm reflecting on is like why I don't own this game yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I don't love the Scourge. And the 2-player set comes with everything you need.
Right.
And so in a way you you need a lot of the stuff other than the figures that are in there. And so I don't know, like how do you guys feel about that? Because I'm facing remaking my 2-player set, or if I want to remake a 2-player set for Relicblade, and is it better to just leave it open for people to choose the factions that they like, or is it better to make it easier for people to buy the game by bundling it all into you should have the humans and the Scourge? What's your perspective on that in your experience?
I think that is an excellent question, Sean. And I think it's something that lots of game companies are struggling with. If you look at Fantasy Flight, for instance, they've done an interesting thing where you've got a starter set, right, for either well, I mean, you can't really use Legion because there's only 2 factions. But if you look at Rune Wars, right, there's a faction that's got the undead and the humans in it. But if you don't want the undead and the humans, they've also got the chaos guys and the elves that have starter armies of their own, and they have a box of all of the stuff that you need to play the game that comes in the starter box. So you can kind of make your own starter box. And I was wondering about this, and it is true. Dropfleet does have that. It's called the Dropfleet Commander Quick Start Rulebook Set, which includes all the maps and the tokens and the rulebook and everything that you get in the starter. And then if you do that and you get yourself one of the starter fleets, you've basically built yourself, and it's not quite as much of a savings, I don't think, but it gives you everything you would have, but your chosen fleet. But I definitely think that is something that should be a consideration for game companies, Sean. And I think what I'm sensing your impulse is probably the right way to go, where you kind of need to have a way to jump into a game where you feel like you're welcome and it's not a huge barrier to entry, but you're not nailed into one specific track where, like, as you say, maybe none of your friends like the Scourge, or maybe they don't. Maybe none of them like the UCM guys. That could happen too.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, like, I think like looking back at when I first got into 40K, it was like Space Marines and Dark Eldar, and Dark Eldar is a bold choice because basically everyone I knew had Dark Eldar sprues in their closet.
Lying around.
What I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think that, just like leaving it open sounds smart, but I also want to make it super easy. So,
well, so as a veteran gamer, I really like the War Machine model, which is each faction has a starter box that comes with the extra little bits you need to play. Yeah. And if 2 people each buy their own starter box, you can immediately play the game. And each starter box is like, I want to say, I think they're still around $50. So for $100, which is the price of most, somewhere near the 2-player starter boxes of most other companies, you're in. So that's the way I like it. But I do know a lot of people liked when Guild Ball went to the Christmas morning model of here's a box, when Steam 4-inch Games did it with here's a box and it has everything you need to play. And it was even almost a board game where the fold out board and everything. Right. So, but it's still 2 factions. So if you don't like those factions, you're doing that. So as a veteran gamer, I prefer that. But if you're trying to lure net new players into the hobby, I can see the appeal of the everything you need for 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already making metal miniatures, so I'm probably not going to target like the people who are going from board games to miniature games.
You're probably targeting miniature gamers. Yeah. So I like the
factions with like the add-ons or like a starter bundle seems pretty smart.
Yeah.
Especially if you can add different because bottom line, like what we're talking about is Dropfleet, and I would have Dropfleet models sitting around here in my studio if
they had the starter box
in the starter box,
right?
Yeah. So I don't know, I say that, but the Scourge models are awesome. I just whatever. I think the Protoss guys versus the humans would be what I want to own.
Right.
So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's the thing. I think they do have starter boxes for each of the fleets, but it doesn't, then you got to buy the little extra thing to play. So they didn't quite go the privateer press route where the little extra things to play are in the starter box.
Because you need those things.
You do.
It's not like, you could make your own tokens. You need the map. You need the city templates. You need the little tokens to show which sectors are which. And yeah. I mean, you could make it all yourself, I guess, but it's a question.
But then you're already, because that we were talking about barrier to entry, and so you're
making a harder barrier.
Exactly. Yep. No, I think you're right. It's a balance of freedom of choice versus ease of entry, and that's a tricky one.
Yep. So there you have it. So next time we're going to talk about the rules and the gameplay. So we're going to get into that. Yep. But Sean, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy one-man band of a miniature gaming company over there to join us here on the show.
It's sure fun to get to hang out and talk about this stuff because, like,
We really appreciate it. Hey, Sean, if people want to find out more about you and your game and what you're up to, where should they go on the internet?
So Relicblade.com has a lot of stuff about the game. I like social media wise, I really like Instagram. I do Sean Sutter art on Instagram, so you can see some cool stuff on there. And then like really probably the heart of Relicblade right now is on the Facebook group, Relicblade Adventure Battle Friends. And that's where
Blade Adventure Battle Friends.
Yeah, that's where you can plug into the community and see other people's models and battle reports and conversations about rules and all the buzz. So that's a fun place to plug in if you're interested.
Cool. Awesome. Well, fantastic, Sean. And if you do buy into Dropfleet, let me know. And next time I'm in the San Francisco area, maybe we can get
that would be awesome.
There you go.
That's dangerous.
That is dangerous. See, now I'm taunting you to buy in. So.
That's right.
All right. Awesome, Sean. Well, thanks again. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by all of the friends that we've made over the years at Patreon, or who have joined us at Patreon after we found them in other places. Today I would like to thank Mike Schaefer, Gert Shepins, Philip Schneider, Michael Scott Matecha, I don't know, could be either way, Dean Scully, Carl Sears, and let's go for Peter Shaw as well. Thank you for everything you've allowed us to do over the years. Without you, this show would not have continued as long as it has and wouldn't be around anymore. I say that without an inkling of doubt in my mind. Thank you, everyone who stepped up and kicked a little coin into the tip jar from time to time and helped us keep the wheels on this old hag as long as it's been going. Did you ever notice how hard it is sometimes to keep track of what's going on around you? I do. I do all the time. I have no clue what's going on around me half the time. I've had it brought to my attention several times recently that I can be completely clueless as to what's going on around me. And the more distractions there are, the worse I can get. In fact, my wife will not have a conversation with me if there's a TV on behind me, even if it's mute, because no matter what is on the TV, I will be distracted. It could be curling, for all I know. And I would just start staring at the little puck sliding across the ice. And it just doesn't matter. I'm just very easily distracted. And so the worst scenario for me to have a conversation with me, the worst place you could possibly be is like a sports bar or any of those bars where they have TVs up all over the place, because I'm just not going to be able to follow anything that's going on. And I have felt over the years, everyone knows, or longtime listeners anyway, should know how I feel about social media. And especially when it draws you away from what's happening around you. And I've mentioned that on any number of occasions, pretty much at least one time or another on every segment of the show. Today, I'm going to revisit that topic just a little bit, and I think I may have mentioned it once or twice in the past, but I really want to get this out of the way so I make sure that I say it in the time that I've got. If your kid is doing something, put your flipping phone away. Now, I know none of us have flip phones anymore, but you get the point. Okay, if you're at a sporting event or if you're at a karate or anything, put the phone away. I know a lot of this can be boring. My son plays baseball. I know boring, okay? Nothing is quite as boring as a bunch of 7-year-olds trying their darndest to play baseball. But look at it from the child's point of view, okay? No matter how boring it is for you, what if something good happens? What if it's a karate practice or a rehearsal that you happen to be at or a sporting event or a dance, anything, and they do something cool and they look over and you're on your phone? How is that going to make them feel? How would you have felt when you were a child? Because most of you listening to my voice right now probably grew up at least within 10 or 20 years of when I grew up, which meant no cell phones, which meant when our parents were there, they were either paying attention or they were reading Sometimes my parents would do that, or like a newspaper. Okay, so there are parallels. But anyway, think about it. And actually, now that I think of it, I think I might have looked up and seen my parents reading from time to time. But anyway, maybe that's why I'm so scarred. Probably not. Probably has something to do with a lot of other things that I have mentioned. Anyway, for your kids' sake, put the phone away. Okay, unless it's an emergency, and work. When you're like you're rushing around and you got them to practice, that's not an emergency. It can't be. If it was your job, go away then. Drop them off and go somewhere else so they're not thinking you might possibly be looking at them, so that when they look up, they get a goal or they do a good catch. My son plays lacrosse. He plays a lot of stuff off and on. But every time he catches that ball, he looks for me because he thinks it's awesome that he could catch that ball. And if I'm not looking at him, noticing, I don't even want to think about how that feels. You know what? And it could be okay. Could be fine. Who knows? Maybe I'm the sensitive one around here right now. That's happened before. But I don't want to think. I don't want to take that chance. Do you want to take that chance? Do you want to take the chance that it's okay with your kid that you're not paying any attention to them and you'd rather be looking at cat videos or checking your likes on Twitter or whatever it is you do on Snapface and Alpha Chat and whatever, it's not worth it. It's just not. Okay? So the next time you find yourself at a game or at a recital, or, I mean, I've seen it all. At theater, at plays, I've watched people on their phones during the whole play. I've seen it at all. I don't get it. You know what? You don't get any credit for going to that event if your nose is buried in your phone the whole time. In fact, it's negative credit. Because if you weren't there, your kid wouldn't be looking at you or towards you when they do something good. This has nothing to do with gaming. And I know that. And for those of you who feel cheated, I apologize. The free 4-hour podcast just ended with me being super grumpy and giving a tirade. So I'm going to cut it short. But I'm just going to think maybe this goes into your head just a little bit. Okay? And maybe the next time you're at a game or a recital or a play or anything where your kid is in, and they're going to be looking to you for acceptance and approval and admiration, maybe your nose isn't in your phone. Okay, and maybe when they look up, you're going to see them and you're going to smile, and maybe that smile is going to do more for that kid than you could possibly imagine. And do you want to take a chance that that's not the case? Because I don't. And so I don't take my phone out anymore. I used to, till very recently. Not often, but I did. Oh, although I will take the phone out to take a picture so that I can tweet it later if somebody stands in front of me so I can't see what my kid is doing. I will admit that I've done that. But, anyway, we're all failed creatures. We're all fallen creatures, right? We're all striving to be better than we are. And anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. Gaming is cool. There you go. How about that? I'm trying my best to fight off Star Wars Legion, but solo a Star Wars story did not help me in any way, and I feel myself weakening. If there was a way to play Legion without playing Luke and Darth Vader, I think I would have already jumped in. I don't know. I have no one to play this game with. No one here is interested in playing this game with me, and still I feel myself weakening. And I know if I do weaken, it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars because I'll also need a bunch of terrain. But anyway, I'm fighting it off. There you go. There's a little gaming there. Cap the end. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Hey, so speaking of how great gnomes are,
Yes, and they are. Great.
I made that a gnome miniature, and I made 2 versions of it, just sort of on a whim. And I was just managing my store, and a bunch of like my stats popped up, and it turns out that's my most popular model right now. Like, it's outsold all my other models. That
Gnomes are great.
So, even though I was sort of on the fence about whether people would like it or not,
I bought all your gnomes. Well, here's the thing. So I think I mentioned this to you. I'm playing a gnome character in D&D, and I wanted a cool looking gnome, and it's actually really hard to find a good gnome model. There aren't that many. Yeah. and you usually see halflings.
Yeah, halflings,
So-
and they tend to be. Well, I don't know. It seems like the sculpts are a little bit funky too. You end up having to like dig to the bottom of the like Reaper barrel.
Yeah. Right. And if you Google it, like if you look for images of gnomes, there's some cool drawings of gnomes. Like there's some really cool, great artwork that makes gnomes look gnomish but cool. You know, not gnomish and like garden gnomish, right? Like actually kind of neat gnomes. And the thing is, like, but no one sculpts them that way. So it's really hard to find a like nicely sculpted like gnome. You'd be like, "Wait, I hate to run into him in a dark alley." You know,
I don't think most people think that when they think of it.
you should though, right? Like a good gnome, you want a gnome that's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you in a dark alley." Like I'd murder you if you stole a mask from me. That's the kind.
Oh
of
yeah, I guess I can see it. If you stole from a gnome, that's
yeah. You stole. If you take a gnome's, that's you're done. You're dead to me.